Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Show. It is Sunday, March 8th. My name is Promise, and I am joined today with one of my favorite people, Seth Andrews. We're going to be taking you guys' phone calls. Hopefully, we're going to have some theists calling in with their belief, whatever God they believe in, and their reason for why they believe in that God. We'll talk more in a second about what kind of calls we'd like to get, but the lines are open, 720-619-2288. Seth, how are you? What kind of calls
good.
are you
I
hoping
mean, the world's
for?
on fire and a lot
Yeah.
of people suck, but other than that, I'm just peachy. I think a lot of people feel that. I was at an event, we had a speaking event yesterday with myself and Erica and Forrest in Tulsa. It was so much
That's
fun.
right. I wanted to hear about that too.
And with the crowd, you could tell they were hungry for hope. A lot of people feel that, and every day you think, well, maybe it won't get worse. And then you wake up and you see a billow of fire, and you think, how much worse will it get? And, it's been really an exercise in trying to hold on to the good. We tend to, I think despair is what the opposition wants. They want us to get overwhelmed and check out. And I, in my own life, have found kind of the scar tissue building up. And so I've had to really try to re-engage and be like, there's so much that's good about life. And there's so many good people out there. And civilizations some have survived. And so, maybe the empire is not totally going to fall. I've been going through a lot of that. But, whether or not someone believes we are one nation under God, well, I want to know about that. If you believe that we can't promise and I can't be moral without God, I want to know about that. I want to hear your perspective. If you think there is a first cause intelligent designer of the universe and you think you can demonstrate that, give us your best shot. If there's even something else that's been really gnawing at you that you want to get off your chest, I don't know about you, Promise, but I'm game. Just throw it out there, right?
Yeah, I am totally with you. Yeah, I think it's such a weird time. I don't know how much of this is just like my trauma response to life in general, but I feel like you get into a phase where it's like you get kind of used to the chaos. And I think that when you're in this more activist role, like I feel like the world's on fire. And I've been kind of like shouting about this for what feels like years now, has been years. And then back before that, I was a Christian who also felt like the world was on fire, but for different reasons, And so now it's interesting for me to watch everything. And it's not like I'm watching things like, yeah, it's just another day. But part of me is like, yep, awful things. So I got to stay focused and keep doing the thing. But then I'm watching and reminding myself that for a lot of people, this is their first time realizing some of these things. It's their first time being exposed to, if they grew up, especially like sheltered by faith and stuff, they're starting to wake up to things around them. Like, oh, there's a lot of injustice happening and chaos and destruction and all sorts of things. And so, I don't know, it's interesting trying to find that fine line between staying aware, staying in the battle, and then like you said, not falling into despair. And I think doing things like this show actually really helps with that, because we get to have conversations about all sorts of things, whether it's something that's currently happening or about somebody, just an individual's beliefs or whatever it may be. So I'm excited for the calls today. This is what I love
Promise,
doing.
when you were a believer and you had seen Gilead starting to happen all around us, what would you have thought about it? I asked myself, like, I used to think we were one nation under God, etc. But I can't imagine I would have been down with ICE and with just, setting Iran on fire and all of these other. I just don't think I would have bought it. I don't know if I'm giving myself too much credit or not. Do you ever ask yourself, I wonder how the young believer Promise would have filtered all the news of the day?
For sure. I mean, when I was in my teens, I was just blissfully following what I, had been brainwashed into and what the people around me were supporting. So I was like, Sarah Palin is the greatest thing ever. But as soon as I kind of started thinking for myself in especially my early 20s, I think that's a big part of why I left is because I outgrew my faith, like my love for people and my morality outgrew the shell that religion had me in. So I wasn't able to support the bigotry that I was seeing around me. I started to get to know people that were queer or that were had different beliefs than I did, that were Buddhist or Muslim, and I suddenly couldn't stay in my bubble. So, to my credit, I think that is why I left, is because I couldn't handle seeing stuff like this around me, which is that's the positive side. There's like some of the silver lining here is that I am sure we're going to see another wave, kind of like after COVID and after 2016, there were some waves of people leaving the church and leaving religion, leaving dogma in general. I think we're going to see a lot more of that from this as well, because you start having to draw a line in the sand when you're like, wait a second, I can't, I didn't, this isn't cool. I didn't sign up for this. And you realize that your church might have, though, your pastor might have, your religious beliefs might have. So maybe it's time to progress past those. I hope we hear about that happening more as
I,
shit keeps hitting the fan.
it's been a black light at the scene. So I was raised, and it was always be honorable, tell the truth. If you make a deal, keep your word. Don't love money, don't lust, don't commit adultery, don't take vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and all of these things that were taught to me to live a moral life. And when you see those same people downloading all that stuff, giving lip service, I guess, to it, and then they literally have voted in an antichrist. Now, promise I struggled just a little bit. I so appreciate the progressive Christians, the James Tallaricos, and the Amanda Tylers and all those. I so appreciate this notion that Jesus was all love and light. Jesus would have never wanted to control the bodies of women, and he would have never judged gay people, and he would have never made hell. And I appreciate that so much. I think that speaks to the humanism in their hearts, and that many of these people are my allies. I would proudly stand shoulder to shoulder with them. But on some level, I'm screaming. The verses in the Bible are there. I don't care if Jesus specifically said anything or not about gay people, right? I mean, if you read the Old and the New Testament, the Bible takes an extremely hard line.
Yeah.
On LGBT people. And if you, talk about the Bible being pro-woman, you and I are both thinking the same thing. Did we read the same
Right.
Bible?
Yeah.
And maybe it speaks to people make a religion in their own image. I did a speech yesterday, not to go off on a tangent, about how Jesus in many Christian cultures looks like the people who worship him. And I did this scenario. What if I was to walk into a standard Bible Belt, Oklahoma, white bread, corn fed Baptist church? And I showed them a painting of an African American Jesus, because there are a lot of African American homes and churches which have a black Jesus. How would they respond? Well, they'd flip out, right? They'd almost certainly lose their minds. The idea that Jesus was a brown skinned Middle Eastern Jew, if he was to appear today, he'd probably end up abducted and tossed into the back of an ice van. But we see Jesus sort of molded into the different cultures of this world. There's a Native American Jesus, there's a Hindu Jesus, there's an Asian Jesus, there's all these, and it's sort of an in my image kind of thing. I want a God that validates me. And I think a lot of these Christians who are so generous of heart and so egalitarian, they've kind of made a Jesus in their own image. Anyway,
For
that's
sure.
just what's been on my mind lately.
No, I think that's totally accurate. I mean, it's the cherry picking that we see throughout Christianity, which to me is the dangerous and scary thing about Christianity, is that you can cherry pick it to kind of fit your agenda, which is what I think we see happening with a lot of the right wing extremism. I don't think a lot of the people in the White House are even actual believers. Obviously, I can't mind read, but I do think that they figured out how to use this to their advantage and to cherry pick things. And we wouldn't have all these people, all these Christians arguing with each other about their different theologies if it was that clear. But I think that is definitely what happens with progressive Christians. And I have two strong opinions. Number one, I'm really grateful that there are people cherry picking the best, most benign, most, you know, flowers and unicorns and rainbows out of the Bible. Please do that, because I think people will always be picking something out of the Bible. And I hope that they continue shaming the ones who pick the worst shit out of it, and just get it, like, cherry pick all the good things and leave everything else. Please do that. I also fully agree with you. I think that there is a side of Jesus that I didn't address growing up believing in Jesus, and I was obsessed with Jesus. I don't know about you, but Jesus to me was like the good cop of the,
Yeah.
Trinity. And so I just thought he was so great. And it was in kind of reading it more objectively and like learning more here and there. I was like, okay, this is like what we know about this character is pretty complex, and he's not smiling Jesus. What's the actor from that Smiling Jesus? Anyways, he's not just like walking around just like this perfect, like, let the little children come sit in my lap,
Yeah.
which is also creepy in those shows. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of that is happening. On that note, we still have lines open, 720-619-2288. And I would really love to hear if there's any believers who just are, because I don't feel like we get these calls very often, just a sincere believer, somebody who really believes and thinks that they have a good reason for their belief and wants to share with us. Because I think, I mean, we can have a calm conversation with anybody, but I think we can definitely have a calm conversation with somebody that's being honest and willing to engage and like share. We don't have to go into like crazy debate mode where we're like, well, you're just wrong. We can hear you out. And I would love to have somebody like actually take the time to explain why they really believe. We get a lot of these calls where it's like, well, I chat GPT'd this argument and I'm going to follow my script now and use it. Or, well, I believe because I believe. Okay, great. But I don't feel like we get to, like, I get it. I wouldn't have called these shows either. But we don't hear from like the people like me. I wholeheartedly believed. I really did. And I believed that I had really good reason for it. And I think that would be a cool call to hear. I don't know. Did you, like, how wholeheartedly did you believe at your like most fervent stage? Were you like,
Wow.
would you
Well,
have called a show like this, and would you have like felt that you were capable of calling a show like this?
let me think about. By the way, I would also welcome calls from non-believers if they want to sound off. Just FYI, I know there's a ton of atheists, and I know we're focused toward believers, but I found that a lot of the people who are non-believers who want to call and spin us in a different direction have some interesting stuff. I think about, I promise I was a Bible literalist, Rush Limbaugh listening. I bought Ann Coulter books and devoured them. I was a Fox News watcher, and that's kind of how it molded but I was also an activist. And I remember I used to call into like conservative local talk shows just to sound off. Well, without a church, there is no state. Without Christianity, there is no. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I didn't know anything about the founding fathers. I'd learned an abridged or revised or distorted version of my own history. It's the kind of thing where the Christian culture today is, they teach their kids the history that is taught by David Barton, who has no degree, background, or experience at all in history. And he is a history distortionist. Our own former superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma, Ryan Walters, he once displayed proudly the books on his bookshelf, and there were just a few. And it was like, there was a book from William Bennett, who was once part of the Reagan administration, and he was exposed as having $8 million in gambling debt. There was David Barton, and of course he's a historian, pseudo historian. He's not a historian, but he wrote a history book, and he teaches supposedly history in churches. And he wrote a book about Thomas Jefferson, and it was so wrong. It was so riddled with errors and lies that his own publisher, a Christian publisher, Thomas Nelson Publishing, yanked the book from the shelves outright. That's how bad he is. And then the third book was, of course, the Bible. And there was a time when I would have just bought it. I would have just lapped it up because it validated me. If the founders were all Christian and they all did Jesus stuff, then that validates me. And, we as human beings, I think, aren't we wired to want to be validated? It's like when someone brings us information that's contrary to a cherished belief and we feel that discomfort and dissonance rise up. It's because what this doesn't validate me and I feel emotionally and intellectually unsafe. And what if I'm wrong? And I don't want to be embarrassed. And, there's so many other things that are going on. But yeah, I was Adam and Eve. I was Noah's Ark. I was Jesus was born in a manger and died on a cross and he was coming again. And we thought, I don't know about you. I thought the end times were like here. Every time we'd hear about a new conflict in the Middle East, or every time Russia did something, my father used to talk about the awakening of the bear, which is talked about in scripture, and Russia was the bear. So Russia's reawakening, and it's the commie Satanists over there. And if they're Y2K, we were all nervous about Y2K. I know it doesn't really matter. Every generation thought it was living in the last generation, and how many
Yep.
generations have there been? And then we're talking about rapture anxiety. And this is the
Right.
thing. Did you suffer from this? Like someone makes a prediction and you have an oh shit moment and it freaks you out. I had a few of those in my life. Did you? Is the question.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I grew up with Christian nationalism, dominionism. So we actually didn't really think that the end times were necessarily going to happen, and certainly not the way that a lot of other Christians did. In fact, I remember my dad reassuring me because I was so scared as a kid. I remember doing Y2K, freaking out, and my dad saying, we don't worry about that. We still have to, take dominion over the earth. We have quite a ways to go as Christians. And so I really believe that we were called to, like infiltrate the government and, Hollywood and education and all of that. So I didn't have that fear, but we definitely believed in the prophetic. So all the time there was like things happen. I mean, people, the way I grew up, you would have somebody come up to you all the time and say, God told me to tell you this. And that was had devastating effects on my life because I took it seriously. I mean, I had a friend tell me, like, we were like 17 years old. We're going to see a butterfly and it's going to mean that this is the guy you should be dating. And then I married this like horrific person because there was like a butterfly one time because it's in the 2000s and there's butterflies on every kind of decor ever because that's what we were doing at the time. So,
Hang on. I got to jump in. Hang on.
yeah,
Did
I
the guy
dropped a
show
lot.
up and say that God told me we're supposed to? I mean, you can take this as far as you want or nowhere, all right? You set the rules. But did he show up and say, the Lord told me that we are to be together, kind of thing?
That happened actually a few times. So I was the pastor's daughter. So we had people coming through church to tell my dad. And I actually remember one time telling my dad, this one guy is like creeping me out and he has a crush on me. And my dad's like, I don't think so. The next day, my dad comes home from work, which for him was being in the church office all day. He goes, well, that guy did come and have a meeting with me and he told me this whole dream and said God gave me this dream and he's giving me your daughter as my wife and all this stuff. That I mean that happened a few times. This guy was like really adamant about it. And my luckily, my dad goes, God did not give you that dream. And he ended up packing his bags and like moving back to some other state because it turns out he had moved there just because he thought God was telling him that. But that was like a thing that happened in our culture. Like guys would move around and go places and say like God told me I'm supposed to marry this person, which is
Did they really
insane.
think so, you think? I mean, it sounds to me like the ultimate line. Like, hey, you're
Right.
my destiny, baby, right? I mean, it's not
Yeah.
my thing. It wasn't my idea. The Almighty wants us to be
God said.
together, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can't tell. Like you have no way to tell. Which that would be another great call. If somebody that believes in the prophetic wants to call in and tell me how we would know if that was somebody like just using that to their advantage or if it was really God telling them, like let call us with that one. That would be
I more than that,
fascinating.
I saw it with breakups. God just, he's
Oh,
sending me in a different direction, I think. And I don't know, I feel this check in my spirit that maybe this just isn't where I'm supposed to be relationship wise. And it's
the
not
check in
you.
my spirit
Yeah.
language.
It's not you, it's me. And I want to be faithful to what the Lord wants. When really we were like, oh shit, I want out of this, this dating relationship ASAP, right? I'm done. The honeymoon's over, or I realized I was just bored, or I found something out about this person I don't like, or we're driving each other crazy. You can always pin it all back to
Just
Jesus.
say it was God.
Yeah, Jesus said, maybe you should
He's
move
not
on
into
so
it.
that
Yeah.
you can become closer to me. And I just thought, wow, that's just the ultimate. Like, is it cowardice? I don't know, but it just sounds like a line to me. It just sounds like a line. So
I
that's
grew up hearing the line, a lot of people, God's called me into full-time ministry suddenly. And he's also told me that you guys are going to support me in this. And so then, of course, they're asking for money. And people who just like quit their jobs to go into full-time ministry. And of course, needed money from humans to help facilitate that.
all
But
right. I see a
it's
call, but
wild.
I got to tell you a
We,
story.
yes.
Can I tell
Yeah,
you a story?
please.
Because we've got a little band. What are we doing? 3 hours? All right, we got time to tell a story. So I used to be in a band. I played keyboards in a band back in the 80s, right? And this was a great era for keyboards back when they had the keytar, because we were sick and tired of the guitar
This is the
players and the
best time
drummers
for, yeah, of
getting
course.
all the attention, and the keyboard players and the bass players got nothing. We got no attention. We're like, no, we want to be rock gods. And I always wanted a guitar, but I never had one. But I did play in a Christian rock band. We were horrible. We were the worst. We played like skating rinks. People are like reverse skate, and we're like Jesus. We're playing this stuff, and but we needed an actual lead singer because one of our guitarists was just kind of doing we thought. All right, well, what do you do? What do you do when you're a naive kid from a homeschool and Christian bubble? And you want a lead singer for your Jesus band. Well, you put a classified ad out. Christian band in this region looking for lead vocalist.
Oh no.
And lo and behold, some dude, I don't remember his name, responded. And it was about a 30-minute drive to my friend's house for band practice. And we thought, we'll audition this dude. So I'm driving my dad's VW Rabbit. Looked like a little roller skate with wheels on it. And I go over and I pick this dude up, and he's just standing on the street corner for pickup holding this guitar. And so I get him in, and we're driving there, and I shit you not. This guy was from maybe 1,000 miles away. God came to him in a vision, told him to leave everything, sell everything, whatever, get on a bus, come to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because he was going to start his ministry. And I guess the first part of it was he's supposed to meet this mega pastor, a guy named Kenneth Hagin from this big church called Rhema. And he just freaking walks into this church and demands to see the mega pastor because God has promised a rendezvous and he is now going to join Hagin's ministry. Well, they saw this dude coming and said, hell no. They was locking the doors, right? They're like,
Oh my
danger,
God.
freaky. And he ends up in my car. And we went out, and of course, it was just a horrible thing. But I never forgot how deluded. I mean, I'm not trying to be cruel to the guy, but how distorted has your religious culture made you, where you abandon your life to
Right.
pursue a goal that you felt or envisioned or dreamed, and you've uprooted everything for a phantom. That's exactly what this guy did. And I think about him all the time, all these decades
Yeah.
later, and I wonder whatever happened to him. Is he still drifting from border to border, from
Right.
vision to vision? I don't know. But that was my story. And I just wanted to tell people I played in a band because I like
That
to say band like that.
that is a very fun fact. It sounds like you were legitimately in a
Terrible.
band.
I was horrible. I was terrible. But we thought we were going to go out and change the world. We thought we were going to go out and rock for the
Obviously.
rock. Did you listen to the rock or just the regular CCM contemporary pop stuff on the radio?
I have to say I was obsessed with Skillet specifically. I
Skillet.
was like a major Skillet fangirl, which
Okay.
is if you see what they're up to now, he blocked me on Facebook, if that tells you anything, John Cooper from Skillet, because
Wait,
I
wait, wait,
told
wait,
him he
wait. What
was
are they
way.
up to now? What are they
Oh,
doing?
he wrote some book about like it's super Christian nationalist, and the book is something about like being like a tough man or something. I have to look up the title for this
Oh,
because
it's
it's
like
so
that raising
bad.
a modern day knight thing where you rediscover
Yes.
what true manhood is, kind of
Yes,
deal.
and so, oh, Wimpy, Weak, and Woke is the title of his. Look. And so he posted this, and he's like holding it, and in this picture, he's wearing so much makeup, which is great. That's fine. Like I'm talking foundation and like all the things.
Wow.
And I said, like, John Cooper looks so excited about your book, but can you just tell me what concealer you're wearing because it looks amazing? And I got like thousands. I got more likes on that comment than he did on the post, and so then I got blocked. But went from being a fan to being blocked.
Oh
Pretty
my God.
quick there.
That's awesome.
We
That's awesome.
have some callers here now. I feel like your story also just made a great case against Pascal's wager because you don't get it's not like, well, I'll believe just in case. People are giving up their entire lives, like you said. So these things matter. We want to know what you believe and why you believe it, and we want to hopefully hear that you have a good reason for it. So, but before then, we've got a couple of atheist, agnostic callers. You down for just going down the list as
I
they are?
trust you. I follow your lead.
All right, let's talk to Jan. Hey, Jan, you are live on the line with Promise and Seth. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Promise. It's good to talk to you. I followed you for a while. And hi, Seth.
Oh, thank you.
Hi.
I'm glad to see that you made it through the storm. Did you have
Yeah,
any
we've
damage?
had we started the spring storm season with some significant tornado activity, loss of life, a lot of destruction. We actually had the shelter, I have an underground shelter in the garage, so we had it prepped out and we're ready to get down there, but the twister kind of like that tornadic system kind of bounced over us. They're predicting more for Tuesday. So, it's just one of those
Yeah.
things. But when you're born here, you kind of get used to it. When the sirens go off,
Yes.
instead of running for underground cover, you go outside with your cell phone trying to get video of the green sky and the twister dropping out. That's how pathetic I am. But thanks for
Right.
checking. We're doing great, Jan. Appreciate that.
Good. Good. I live in Iowa, so I kind of understand that.
Yeah.
I am consider myself agnostic, and I did struggle with deconstructing for probably about 3 years, and it was my son that actually got me onto listening to you, Seth, and he passed away last August. But
Yeah.
anyway, we debated this back and forth between the two of us for quite some time. My biggest stumbling block was how humans are different from animals, and that animals live in the present, and humans have the ability to live in the past or, think about the future. Just the fact that our brains are so much more developed than animals just made me, I thought this was like the spirit of God or whatever. And I also want to say something kind of controversial that I know you're a dog lover, but I don't think dogs love. Now, you probably disagree with me, but I don't think dogs react. They react to kindness and food and that kind of thing, but I don't think animals can actually love. Would you agree with that?
Nope. I
Yeah,
would
well,
not agree with that.
the reason I wouldn't agree though is because, how is that not what we're doing? Are we not also reacting? And like, that's as much as we can measure. Like, love isn't some objective force that's out there and it's like us humans have access to it and nobody else does. Love is it's an English word that we put a label on all kinds of things. It's actions we do for each other. It's oftentimes a feeling we want, an emotion we want to communicate. And maybe dogs don't have that. We don't know. That's the thing. We have no idea. But I think I actually love the idea of viewing love also as kind of a response sometimes, a reaction to things, or it can be something that we put out there first. So I don't know. It's hard for me to I get why it would be a stumbling block for you with the animals and stuff, but for me, it more helped me like make sense of things because of course I would think as a human, well, because I perceive myself as being more highly developed, therefore I must be a higher being and therefore a higher being must be interested in me. And that just sounds silly at the end of the day. Like of course you're going to think that. But I get where you would be hung up on that. Seth, what do you think about all of
Well, I have a few thoughts.
that?
I'll try not to blather on too much, but this is what happens when you invite a blatherer on the show. So let me try to distill it down. I would encourage you to spend some time on the Gutsick Gibbon channel. We just yesterday at our March 7th event, we're talking, she did a whole presentation about how we are animals, right? It's not humans and the primates. We are primates. And all of these, there are a lot of arguments about how we are so much more advanced. But we see that in the primate world and in much of the living world, we see creatures doing what we do. I'm not sure that I agree that animals live only in the moment. If you look at animals which grieve when some member of the pack or troop or whatever is lost, that grief is an emotional reaction to loss. That speaks to love. And we see in the primate world that there are monkeys, apes, etc., who will put themselves in harm's way to rescue, like a drowning primate, a drowning member of their tribe, even at the cost of their own life. Well, that's empathy. That's a kind of altruism that speaks to love. But even more than that, I recently did a true story. I have a second podcast that does short form true stories. And there was a neuroscientist who wanted to find out if dogs were more interested in treats or in getting affection and praise from us. So he trained dogs to go through an MRI machine so that their brains could be measured under both circumstances. And he conditioned them for sound. He wrapped up their heads and their ears so the loud noise would not be a bother. It wasn't traumatic. He did this over a series of months until the time came when he was able to have the dog go in to sit and lay still in the MRI machine. And on the other end, there was someone who offered a treat. And then there was someone who would say, good boy, good girl, love you so much, love you so much. And the MRI scans of the brain revealed that the dog lit up a little bit more with praise and affection. That's an emotional response. I look in the eyes of my dog, I see the wagging tail. That's love. Now, is it love exactly as we love? I mean, no. I mean, all creatures are different. But I think you and I may stand apart on whether or not that's actual love, because I think it absolutely is. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Well, that's a very interesting study that you talked about there, and certainly gives me something to think about. And I do know what you're talking about. Elephants, I think in particular, grieve their death.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that's love.
I think that's pretty much the exception, but I tend to think
and I would,
love
in my defense, I would wag my tail if someone offered me a treat, but I would probably wag my tail even more if someone told me I was a good boy. So maybe I have that in common with the animal kingdom as well. Just a little human wagging.
Yeah, but that's still a receptive thing rather than a giving thing. Like I say, I feel like love is something you do rather than something you feel.
What if it's both? I'm sorry,
and that's
Promise,
also,
go ahead.
That's based on the person receiving. Like, if, for example, I use this example all the time, so sorry if my husband's hearing me say this for the millionth time. If you throw me a birthday party, that feels like love to me. If you throw my husband a birthday party, that feels like one of the worst things you could ever do to him, for him. So love is also how you receive it and how you take it. So that's also, it's just so subjective. I guess that's the main word I would use to sum up this whole conversation we're having, is that we're talking about something incredibly subjective, love. It is based on the person experiencing it, expressing it, all of that. And so even as humans, I can do something that I think is really loving, and the person on the other end can be like, that didn't feel like love to me. Well, is it still love? I don't know. Yeah. Maybe for me it is, and for them it's not. So maybe for an animal, they are showing love. I think it just depends.
I mean, if you are in distress, and an animal can sense that, and we know this happens all the time, and the animal comes over, that to me is an outgoing, proactive gesture. That's an emotional response to someone else's pain, and I think that's a kind of heart generosity, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you made some very good points. I just wanted to mention what really tripped me up in my deconstruction, but sure. I did eventually pretty much get past that. So.
Oh, cool. I mean, that's totally valid.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
No, it's totally legit. I don't know about you, Jan, but it's funny. I used to be threatened by the idea that I was the human animal. Right? We're greater. We've been given dominion over the beasts. How dare you say that I'm a monkey? Blah, blah, blah. And these
Mm.
days, I feel kind of, I hate the word honored. But, you know, it's really remarkable to feel connected to the living world. Did that happen
Yes.
for you at all, Jan?
Yes, I watch I don't know if you the animal cams, especially like the eagles. There's a kind of a
Oh,
famous eagle cam here in Iowa that I watch quite a bit, and I've just learned so much from just watching wildlife, and how they live their lives. So,
mm.
yeah.
Well, you're much appreciated, Jan. Anything else for us?
No, I'll let somebody else have a chance to talk to you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks so much for calling, Jan. Have a lovely day.
Okay,
You watch
bye bye.
those
Bye.
animal videos? Promise, I'm a sucker. I'm a
I
sucker.
love I love them. All the like Animal Kingdom and the what's his name that does the voiceover? Why am I going blank on his name?
Uh,
David
David
Attenborough.
Attenborough. Yeah.
Yes. Love those. That's
So
just
my wife
the best.
is hooked on what it's. I think it's called Husky Bros, and the whole channel is nothing but two Siberian Huskies sitting, and they
Oh,
put them in little T-shirts with funny sayings on them, and there's a plate in front of them, and every video they put a new and different food in front of the dogs to see if they will eat it. And so, they'll sniff it. Nah, I don't want that. And then they bring the next thing in. Oh, that's delicious. And they gobble it up. I cannot stop smiling. How's this for old man? For Christmas, and she didn't do this, but for Christmas, I said, what would be fun? What if I got a Bluetooth camera bird house? Seen those ones you put them on a stick in the backyard and they've got a little camera that ties to your phone. And when birds come in,
yes.
it snaps and identifies them and you can watch them building a
I've
nest and
seen,
laying.
yes.
Is that some old man shit? I don't know. It feels
No,
like
do
old
it,
man.
please. Did you get one of those?
I did not. Well, she just doesn't want bird poo all over the porch, and I understand that. I
Fair
get it.
enough.
I don't want to go power wash it off either. But
No, the older I get, the more I care about birds and I just want to watch, like, I get it now. I'm like, there's something that happens where you're just like, yeah, I see how people turn into bird watchers. Like,
yeah,
it's you're out in nature and you're seeing all these, I don't know, maybe it is part of just like, uh, as you get older, you get better at being more present and then you notice things like that more often, but
I think
I
that's
love it.
true. I think that's true. In the first few decades, it's go, 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 right? Run and gun. And these days, I've kind of got my house the way I want it. So if somebody
Hmm.
says, "Hey, you want to go to the 9:30 p.m. movie?" I'm like, "Why would I do that? I'm in Netflix
Right.
and chill. I got dogs in my lap and Natalie at my left, and we're snacking.
Yeah.
Like, why? What are you saying? You want me to get out? No, I don't want to do
Right.
that." There's another animal channel that I'm addicted to. Whoever they are rescued a spider monkey, and so if you go to Kiki the spider monkey, it's Keke, and he runs around the house, the whole house. They have monkey bars and they
Oh
have an outdoor
man.
enclosure. They've really, really, really tricked it up. And he is awesome. And there are two big dogs, and they are a pack. They are a troop. They're a family. They love each other. And they have this skateboard in the house. I swear to you, that freaking monkey hops on and skateboards all around the house, and they have cams all over the house. I'm obsessed with Kiki the spider monkey. If you need
So
to be
cute.
reminded of human goodness and monkey goodness, Kiki the spider monkey, and you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes.
So,
Also, Erica is incredible. I've been watching her videos, which I never watch YouTube stuff, but something happened the other day and Erica popped up and I was like, I gotta watch her stuff. She's the best. I mean, I already knew
yeah.
that, but she's just such an amazing communicator. So there's your animal info for the day. I also have announcements for upcoming shows for this week. Obviously, right now we are on the Sunday show. And then right after this, if you keep watching, it's going to take you directly over to Jimmy's show. I think it's called Calling It Now. I should know this, but I don't remember words ever. And Jimmy will be hosting, I cannot remember who we said.
Jovan.
but oh, thank you. And that will be right after. And then after that, it will be the Sunday show After Dark with Forrest and Austin Archer. That'll be great, I'm sure. And then tomorrow we have Skeptalk at 6 p.m. Central Time with Forrest and Erica. And then Tuesday, 6 p.m., Alyssa and Taylor will be on Chewed Gum, which I miss so much. And then on Wednesday, the 11th, we have The Hang Up with Matt and allegedly Ian. And then TACIS on Thursday with Luxander and Josie. So it'll be
I
a
promise.
fun week. Yes.
So forgive me, I've been a member of the line for a long time, but I usually just do the Sunday show. What's the focus of the target for chewed gum? Like what's chewed gum referring to?
Chewed gum is, well, the title is in reference to what a lot of us were told growing up in youth group, which is that if you have physical contact in a sexual way with somebody else before you're married, then you're like a piece of chewed gum, or you're like a crumpled up paper, or you're like a rose that had its petals stripped off of it. So, but chewed gum, I remember at youth group, our youth pastor passing around gum and giving everybody a piece, saying, chew your gum. And then they told us, like, okay, now take out your piece of gum and offer it to the person next to you. And of course, we're all like 12 years old, so we're all like, ew, disgusting. And they're like, that's what you are to your future husband and wife if you let somebody else touch your body before you're married. It was like this whole thing. So it's in reference to that. So chewed gum focuses a lot on purity culture, talking about, anything related to women, basically. Alyssa, who is one of the main hosts over there, she's a sexpert. And so there's a lot of questions that people call in to ask her. But then, of course, you have, when I used to host, I was on there to talk to anybody who wanted to talk about God claims. And now I heard that Taylor is crushing it. So, but I'm not over there anymore because of the time change, because it's 2 a.m. Finland time when that starts. And I did that one summer and I can't do it again.
I remember would go to away football games in high school, Christian school. And so, we'd be on the bus, sit next to our boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And I remember I'm sitting on the bus next to Sherry. She was my girlfriend at the time. And, we're cold, so we've got our coats and blankets, but mostly it was an excuse to put our hands on each other. Like, we're just totally hormonal kids leaning into each other and wanting to go make out and all that stuff. And I remember every once in a while, the chaperone, teacher, counselor who was at the front of the bus would scream, hand check. We would all have to put our hands in the air to prove that we didn't have them on the legs or the stomachs or the whatever of our partner. And I always thought to myself, this makes no sense, because once we're done with a handshake, your hands literally go back under the blanket. But it was all of that, it'd take us into sex ed, which was mostly shame. Oh, here's what the body parts are. But it was mostly an opportunity to tell us why we're broken. I'm prepping a speech I'm thinking about doing in the summer about advice that we were given that sound good, that turned out to be horribly wrong. Stuff like never go to bed angry. I get it on its surface.
Yes, please do
I
that
get
speech.
It. Like, it's noble. Try to resolve your conflict. Okay. But honestly, if a wrong has been done, go to bed angry. The response is go to bed angry. We get into all natural is always good. And, I'm like, well, no, actually, natural is not. Many of the worst and most dangerous things in the world are all natural. And another one was very rooted in my culture is never have premarital sex, because you want to preserve yourself for your spouse. It's not just a physical union, but a soul union, a spiritual union. Chewed gum, right? And I thought to myself, you are now making a mystery the massively important question of physical and emotional compatibility in the bedroom. Like, it's one of the biggest parts of having a partner. And the faith wants you to say, I'm going to hide it behind a curtain, and I will not have any idea what I'm in for until I am contractually obligated to this person, supposedly for the rest of my life. And I came out of the faith and realized how toxic And so now I'm like, sleep with somebody. Like, and before you get married, live together, be under the same roof, know what they're like when they're not edited for broadcast, when they're not out in the world all polished and showing their best face. I want to see them with
Right.
bedhead. I want to see them with the flu. I want to see them with their cranky. I want to see what they're like when nobody else is looking. Live together. And this is advice that would have horrified me decades ago. I don't know. I'm
Right.
just babbling, promise. Does any of that
No,
resonate
I
with you?
100%. As somebody who had multiple divorces directly because of purity culture pressuring me into marriages, didn't have boyfriends. I only had fiancés. So,
Whoa, whoa,
you
whoa,
know,
whoa,
that
whoa,
that
whoa. Hang
that
on. You
kind of
keep
thing.
throwing this shit out
I
and I
know,
get
it's
hung
so
up.
bad.
You only had like, did you go on just a date, casual date? Let's go out to dinner. No?
To this day, I've never had a boyfriend that I didn't marry, actually. So, but I've been to like once I deconstructed between my marriages, between the actual what I consider to be the only legitimate one, which is the one I'm in, and everything else from, toxic purity culture, I did like go on some dates and like have a fun fling and
Okay.
but other than that, like in that culture, you didn't date to, other than to get married. So as soon as you announced that you even had a crush on somebody, you were obligated to be like courting them because of this whole thing of you can't have sex before marriage. It was like this huge deal. It was crazy.
Now, the pictures
I,
that you post of you and your hubby are adorable. I just love you guys. You just make me
aw,
happy. So I'm so glad you found each other.
me too. Me too. Yeah, all's well that ends well, but
Oh.
damn, I was the poster child for a while there about why not to spread purity culture. It was not good. We
Oh.
do have some callers here if you are ready. Dave's been waiting a little bit, so let's talk to him. And then we've got a theist on the line. So Adam, stay there. You're next after this call. Hey Dave, you are live on the line. This is Promise and Seth. How are you?
I don't see Dave
Good
queued up.
morning, Promise and Seth.
Weird. Okay, forgive
Hello?
me. I'm sorry.
Can you hear
My
me?
screen's frozen. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're here. Hey there.
Okay, you guys can hear me. Okay.
I can. Yes.
Fantastic. So I did want to say real quick, just because I heard you talking about huskies, Seth. I got my Siberian husky with me right next to me, petting her. She's beautiful. And there's very little they won't eat. She eats her own fur.
Don't they blow their coats
wanted
in
to throw that out
February?
there.
So immediately the
That's
entire,
wild.
all of the fur detaches
Yep.
at once. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a biannual blowout. One before the winter and one after the winter.
So much fur. So
I have to
much
take her
hair.
to the groomers twice a year. Yeah.
Isn't it
Yeah,
also
is.
true
Wow.
that Siberians have very sensitive stomachs, though? I always thought they had to have very controlled diets.
Well, mine does not have that one.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Digression. I love talking dogs.
That's all I can
Love
say there.
talking dogs. Go ahead.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I love it. But I know you got
Oh.
other callers, so let's get to the meat, yeah?
Yeah.
So, the reason why I'm calling, I am an ex-Mormon, and I have been having a very particularly difficult conflict with my true believing Mormon mother. The issue is I've been trying to, in particular, bring her attention to issues of abuse and, in particular, anti-LGBTQ issues because I have a trans son, she has a trans grandson, and the problems within the institution directly affect us. And the good thing is, like, she has adapted and is using he/they pronouns like my child wants, and that is something she's been able to adapt to. But anytime I try to talk about like these issues of abuse, sexual abuse, or direct harm to LGBTQ persons, she immediately goes to, I'm attacking the faith. I'm trying to get her to change her faith. I'm never going to leave the church. You can't make me do that. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not trying to make you do that. I'm trying to get you to acknowledge and address these harms that are happening.
I don't know,
And I was
Promise.
wondering if you guys had any advice on how to
The
approach
Promise
that.
and I are staring at each other going, You go
I
first. No, you go
yeah,
first. Yeah.
we're too polite. You know, I think there's a certain point where you have to figure out if this conversation is worth having over and over and over again. But I don't think there's anything wrong with continuing to try. Um, it's because some people are it's like they're completely unable to separate the church and pastors and all of that from God, because to them that, I mean, fair enough, that is like how it exists, because honestly that is how it exists. um but I think, you know, some phrases like the truth isn't afraid of conversation about these things. So if your faith is if your faith is true, then it should be able to handle criticisms against the people practicing it. And I mean, yeah, it's just so, to me it's so difficult with people like that, because they are keeping themselves separate from that because it is painful for them to come to terms. I would have to imagine that if your mom is struggling that much with being, because a lot of Christians can say, well, yeah, there's some bad apples and there's harm caused and it's terrible and it's a problem, but you know, God is still good. It sounds like she's having a hard time even doing that. And to me,
Yeah.
that means there's probably some cracks in the foundation of, you know, like she might already be having some doubts and struggles, and that's some of the glue, is that she has to keep believing that no, it's all good, and don't speak ill about it, because then you're gonna, you know, kind of take away some of the foundation that she has to believe. And so that's a fear there. So for that reason alone, she may never have a conversation with you that's very satisfying about this. And you might have to decide for your own sake and your own mental health, is it worth it to even bring it up then? Seth, what do you think? You might
Oh, it's
have the
hard for me to
opposite to
do
say.
hard for me.
feel.
Go ahead, brother.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah.
I do feel like it's worth it because I do believe that she is a better person than her faith.
I'm sure that she technically is too. And that's the hard thing for me, is watching so many Christians behave better than their faith actually technically allows for.
As much as I hate sounding like a dinosaur, you come to the point where you've done so much of this that there's a previous work that relates to it that you reference. There was a speech that I gave a couple of years ago called The Brick Wall Brain, Why Facts Aren't Changing Minds. And I would encourage you to look it up on YouTube. Just my name, Seth Andrews, The Brick Wall Brain.
I do follow your channel. I'll
Okay.
find that one.
Thank you for that. What you're speaking about is an identity belief. I highly suspect your mom is not believing or protecting for reasons of theology. It is for identity. If something then is wrong, the entire house of cards collapses. I also have learned through hard experience that going in with the end zone of saying, I want you to acknowledge, don't you see? Won't you understand? The word you becomes problematic. People feel pushed. They are back on their heels. Fight or flight or freeze kicks in. And it becomes, again, an emotional response to what they consider to be an attack on who they are, their identity. I have found my tactic, if I engage, and Promise is right, I've had to do a better job of choosing my battles. Some people are simply closed systems. Everybody leaves more frustrated and nothing good comes of it. But if I do engage, I use the word I. So I say, I have been reading and learning about the history of the Mormon church, and I have been really concerned about the things that are being done. I saw this interesting article about this stuff, and I was aghast at the abuses that took place. And for me, I feel I feel outraged and concerned about that. And I just want you to understand that that's where I'm coming from. Well, what you've done is you've been able to address all of the atrocities that have taken place, but you've done so relating only to you, and then they don't feel like you've hit him in the head with a baseball bat and said, Jesus Christ, why don't you see this, you dumbass, get out of the faith, kind of thing. And that's how they might receive it. Right. Does that make any sense at all?
Oh, it absolutely does, because that is how she reacts, regardless of that being the tone, right? Anything addressing the church is an attack on her personally. That's how she receives it.
Yeah, and you may come to the point where you're screaming into the void. There is a line where you say their journey belongs to them. It is not a productive use of my time and energy, and it's not good for my mental health. Promise, I'm so glad you brought that up, right? I will drive myself crazy trying to change what is not changing. It's going to be her responsibility at some point to guide her own attitudes, opinions, and beliefs. I think it's important that she be able to see you living your values in plain view, but it's not on you to change your mind. It's almost like getting someone to not be an alcoholic. You can guide them, you can be a support system, you can do your best, but ultimately it's going to be them that's going to have to decide, I am not going to take a drink anymore. And once they get there, then you can be a support level in another context. I don't know. I promise, am I off base? Do you buy any of that?
No, I think that's
Okay.
dead on. That's
All right.
great.
Protect yourself, Dave. Protect yourself.
I think my resistance to backing off is twofold. Honestly, I don't want to just break contact. I love my mother. I don't want to lose her in my life. I don't want her to lose me in hers. And yet I am faced with issues that are directly affecting my family, like I said, with my trans son. And also the fact that my trans son is a victim of abuse from a religious minister.
Hang on.
So,
Dave, can I jump in? So is your mother being dismissive of that because of her faith?
No, she's not being dismissive of that. And she's not being dismissive of the abuse, and she's not being dismissive of my child as a person. She is being dismissive of anything that connects it to the church.
Well, disagreement is one thing, but someone who is a supporter of active harm takes us into a slightly more complicated territory. Sometimes if we withdraw, I'm not saying withdraw from your mom, but if you feel that there is being cultivated an atmosphere which is a net negative when it comes to the rights of human beings, you may find yourself withdrawing a little bit, having only surface conversations, maintaining a relationship, but not broaching specific things because it's worth it to you to have that connection. But if you do that, I think it's important to understand that it's not your fault, right? They have put you in a position where these are not just disagreements of opinion, they are humanity and inhumanity questions. So, if you are looking to be able to provide an atmosphere of respect and safety for your own immediate family, there might be some hard conversations to have about the nature of your relationship with other people, and that includes parents.
Well, thank you guys. This has been super helpful, and I appreciate being able to share these thoughts with some people who have a little bit more experience with it than I do. I know you got other calls too, so I will I'll bid you guys farewell, and
thanks so
stay
much,
safe,
Dave.
Seth. I remember my time in Missouri when I was at Fort Leonard Wood, and there were 3 tornadoes. We had to go down into the barracks basement. So,
oh man,
stay safe.
That time of year. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks
and I'm
for
glad
calling,
I'm not
Dave.
the only one on the show with a biblical name today. That's really nice to know. So,
hey, mine was taken straight out of the Bible. So,
oh, you promise?
Yeah, it's from the Bible. I can't remember which Bible verse. The promise of my middle name is Joy, by the way. So it's the promise of the joy of harvest. And unfortunately, I don't think I have harvested the souls toward the direction that they were hoping.
A lot of people don't know that Seth is the third son of Adam and Eve, and I always introduce it like this. I say, I am the son of Adam and Eve that was not involved in a homicide. That's how I like to do.
That's nice.
Without,
that's really nice.
I mean, this isn't like I'm not airing all my laundry here, but I will tell you a story that many of my
I already
listeners
have for the night, so.
Like I am no contact with my mother. My mother and father, devout, Bible literalist, theologian level believers, hardcore. There was no religious small talk in our house. They wrote sermons for pastors. My mother wrote a college level Greek New Testament study guide. They were the real thing. And when I was in the faith, I remember they were so proud. I was a Christian broadcaster. Look at our son. He's spreading the good news. He's ministering Jesus. He's followed his calling. And whenever I began to deconstruct, they flipped out. And then when I was an atheist, and especially when I became a very public atheist, they were traumatized. And they began to, pray for me, knock yourself out. You want to have a conversation, we'll do that. But they really started to engage in a kind of boundary crossing that we often allow families to do because they are on the close bio tree, And I was like, well, wait a minute. Would I let somebody else come into my life and say, you're broken, or you're embarrassing the family, or you're going to hell and you're going to burn, and all those things? And I thought, well, absolutely not. Well, why would I give a different set of rules to somebody who was a parent or a sibling or a cousin? And so what I did in my own life, I think respect includes self-respect. And I gave myself permission to have some self-respect. And so what I did was I established a boundary and I said, okay, this is where my line is. You don't get to do this and this and this. We can do other things. Would love to have a relationship. It'll be, well, let's talk about something else. Let's celebrate what we do have in common. Let's be a family. But if you cross this line, if you do this thing, then I am going to withdraw contact. So it puts the ball in their court. And you then are able to protect, your own kind of circle, your threshold. And it wasn't long before the boundary was crossed and the consequence kicked in. And it gives me no joy to be no contact. It grieves me. My mother's pushing 89. I told Nat, I keep thinking maybe I should sit down with her one more time to try to connect after 16, 17 years. Maybe this next time she'll, I'm almost like an abused partner, promise, like maybe this time it'll be okay as I enter the lion's den. But I really do encourage people, they put you in this position and it's okay to say no, even if it's somebody who is super close to you on your family tree. Sometimes family is the family that you choose. And I've kind of filled that void in my own life with family, not just in, my local community, my friends, but with people in this community all around the world. And that's meaningful to me, and it's enough. So I just wanted to throw that encouragement out.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I've had to go back and forth. I mean, the main thing for me is I've treated each family member as their own person, and I think my family is emotionally healthy and intelligent enough that I can do that, and I can set different boundaries with different ones based off of what kind of conversations we can have, even though they generally all believe the same way. And sometimes I've been no contact, sometimes I've been full contact, and sometimes I have to just pull back for a while and realize this time in my life especially is not good for me and this family member to have contact.
And are they hardcore? What's their approach to? Are they now what you were?
Oh, they are. They're in the newspaper. My dad is the Trump prophet all the time. So they're really hardcore. If I told you his name and you went to Google, you'd be like, oh, if you didn't already know who he was. So it's that kind of level. And then all of my siblings and their partners work for the family ministry. So I am truly the oddball out. But a lot of them, I have a book coming out called Gospel of Lies, and my family knows that it's called that. And my sisters are still well, we're really, we know you're an amazing writer and we're happy for you and proud of, they try in their own ways. And so we can still have relationship. I'm not sitting there reading my book to them. Not that they would want that either, but then there's different family members who are not handling that well. And so I'm stepping back and we'll see how it goes. Maybe I need to put up more boundaries. Maybe I'll be no contact. I don't know. But I think that's part of all, relationships are ever changing, even the good ones. And so I think you have to look at them and see where you're at in life, see where that person's at in life. And sometimes you go no contact forever. Sometimes maybe it just needs a breather while that person takes a breath and maybe goes to therapy. I think that helps a lot. But yeah, you have to examine these things. And the way I look at it is like, this is my one life. So how do I want to be spending this time? In turmoil in relationship with this person? No. So therefore, I'd rather disconnect. And then if we can reconnect someday, great. But I'm not banking on that. So maybe that helps
Here's an
somebody too, trying to decide.
interesting angle to that. And it's one of the reasons I tell people to live your life on your terms, loud and proud, even if you're not engaged, even if you are, heaven forbid, no contact, right?
Yeah.
So I am who I am, and everybody knows who I am, where I'm at. So over the course of the last decade and a half, I get these quiet, secret messages from people in my family who have been going on their own journeys quietly. Now, they've seen the shit that went down with me, and they're not to the point where they want to have to deal with that. Oh, Seth took the bullet. I'm not sure I want this kind of chaos. But quietly, they are deconstructing. So what they do is I've become this sort of landing zone. So I get a quiet text, and they're like, don't tell so-and-so. I've really come to that point, and I'm kind of with you. And so anyway, I get you, and keep on keeping on. And I even listen, or I don't, but at least, I totally respect where you're at and I understand it. I've had people in Christian radio who still work in the industry because they've been doing this for 30 years and they don't know what else they would do with their life. So they still work in the industry and they'd like to get out, but they don't know how. They contact me, people I knew decades ago, and they're like, okay, I'm still playing worship music on the air, but holy shit, this stuff's bullshit. And I just want you to know I get you, and I'm glad you busted out. You never know. You never know who's on a journey here. And
Yeah.
if they see someone else like Promise, or like anybody in the activist space, or they see an author or a YouTuber, a lecturer, a scientist, whoever, that actually makes them feel like I'm not alone and I'm not crazy, this can become a seismic moment in their life. So anybody within earshot, if you can, no matter who else you talk to, on your own terms, be loud and proud about who you are, because you might, without even knowing it, be validating somebody else's journey. Anyway, that's
For sure.
that's my advice.
No,
Right?
that's
From a
great.
non-licensed therapist that gives advice on the line.
No, that's really good. That's one of my favorite things. I have never gotten this from my immediate family, but some distant, cousins and stuff will sometimes reach out, and you know, people that I knew years and years and years ago, like, hey, I've been thinking about some things and I was thinking you might be the person to talk to about this. And I always know, like, okay, somebody's like coming around to something. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. And I'm really glad that I'm the person, because I know out of my whole entire extended family, because everybody is pastors and all of that, I am the only out atheist. And so because I've stepped forward and said that I am, people now know, like, there is somebody I could call. There is somebody that's done this. And that to me makes it worth some of the relationships lost, because maybe, some people get to live a more free life. So
You know what? You're just the harlot who wants to sin, and I am loaded with rage.
Right.
According to
Yes.
recent callers, this apparently explains our apostasy.
Yes. Well, we have a theist caller, finally, and maybe we have some more on the way. I know the time change maybe has thrown some people up. So now we can rage out. I'll get super emotional, as I always do, and you can get really angry like you usually do. This is a joke, people. We've been told this before when we're being like the most monotone, boring people ever. But let's talk to Adam. Adam is a theist calling us today. Hey, Adam, you are live on the line. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
So
what's on your mind?
Yeah, and it says here you're a theist. Can I ask which God it is that you believe in?
Christianity.
Okay, so the Christian God. Cool.
Yeah. So I've called to explain that prayer works through grace toward our moral growth, because prayer gives people the gift of charity and inner peace and helps us to overcome negative habits.
we got to pause real quick because we're using, you have to remember we're atheists, but we're using a lot of like churchy language here. So when you say prayer works through grace, I know I know, and you say moral growth. I can understand kind of what you're saying there, but for the audience, what do you mean by prayer works through grace? What is grace?
Grace is a metaphysical relationship that we don't directly see, but is rather something that's subjectively understood in response to prayer. So the church
A metaphysical
teaches
relationship with what?
with some universal identity. There's the idea that there's one identity that encompasses all people, and that we communicate with this thing and request grace from that source, and that we receive it.
Okay, and how do you know that that grace exists?
Well, we have observations of different religious practices, traditions. We know that meditation, prayer, chanting, these things are universals among human beings, and they have similar goals toward this idea of producing inner peace and growing in charity. And the grace is the Christian model of those observations. Grace is the explanation that Christianity offers for these kinds of human behaviors.
So, okay, just to make sure I'm getting what you're saying. So you're saying that prayer works because it's a relationship with us and some kind of, you haven't really stated yet. I'm guessing you mean with God, and prayer is what we see making us more charitable. Do you mean more generous with, like giving to people? Do you mean in how we behave? Because I don't disagree that meditation and sitting there in thought or mindfulness, hiking, all kinds of things like that activate the same place in our brain have benefits on humans. I am just curious where the metaphysical or the supernatural comes in, because I have no reason to disagree with you that prayer can be beneficial to the individual. It can make them feel good. It can make them think that something's happening, and great. But where is the evidence that it's actually connected to a being outside of yourself?
I'd say it's because we don't fully understand the hows, the whens, and the whys of these gifts of grace arrive in us. We make a request. In Christianity, we request grace, and the effects are that it changes the way that we see people. We start to see less of other people's faults. We start to become more inclined towards charity. But the fact that we don't predict the exact way in which this causally happens shows that it's not coming from us. It's coming from an authority that is granting those requests and directing our spiritual path.
So if I were to tell you that now, post-religion, so I used to pray a lot. I had a prayer closet, actually. I was obsessed with praying. Spent a lot of hours a day in prayer, in my prayer closet. And then, of course, like when I was out about my day, I was constantly in prayer. I don't pray anymore. I can't even really meditate because my attention span and I have so much going on. I like mindfulness. I like being outside. I love other things, but prayer just doesn't do anything for me, not in a theistic way or in a non-theistic, spiritual way. It just doesn't do anything for me. However, I would tell you that I am a significantly more charitable, better version of myself now. I feel better. I do better, all of these things. So what would your perspective be on that?
I'd have to ask about the details of the manner in which you prayed. And my opinion here is based on my own experience as well as my observation of religious traditions. So things like people becoming monks and nuns to give up their worldly possessions and serve the poor, as well as in other religions as well that have similar practices.
But here's my problem, Adam. Maybe you're not clear on what my question really is. I'm trying to understand the connection that you have with the divine in this. What is your evidence that that's true? What is your evidence that prayer is something other than a natural thing that humans can participate in, that's just like a mindfulness practice? It's something that lowers the blood pressure. It's something that helps them shift their focus. It's something that helps them be present. What is your evidence that it's actually something that has you participating with the supernatural?
Okay, I suppose there's a couple of ways to explain it. One is that what prayer does and what meditation does is that it counteracts the stress response. But of course, the stress response exists for a biological reason. It's there to respond, it's there to preserve your body. And so it makes no sense that it's purely a brain mechanism. What I mean by it is these effects of prayer, these kinds of these calming effects of prayer, this sort of inner peace. If your mind can override that process when the environment is telling you to not be at peace, when your environment is telling you to be fight or flight, it makes no sense that process is a product of something which is itself the product of evolution. So if it's the product of your brain is the product of evolution. It makes no sense that you can override it, because that would contradict what evolution would predict.
Override it in what way? I'm very confused. So we do know, like, this is not a mystery. People have studied this. People have looked into prayer and its impact on the brain. We know that it is a natural process that is happening in the brain when somebody feels more calm. There's different colors that can make somebody feel more calm. There's different sounds that we can hear. There's different mindsets. You can think yourself into a tizzy. I do it all the time. It's quite easy. You can think about something and it will raise your blood pressure, and you can stop thinking about something and it can lower it. And prayer can do that for people, especially when they've been primed to believe that it's going to help them. We have a lot of studies on the placebo effect. So there's so many different angles that we can come at this whole prayer idea, because as you pointed out earlier, when you wanted to ask how I would pray, people all pray very differently. So maybe we can make this conversation a little less abstract. Do you believe that prayer can change things? Like, do you think that people can be healed because of prayer?
I haven't seen that happen, so I'd have to remain agnostic. I think that prayer.
So what is it that you've seen with prayer then that makes you believe that there is an entire deity attached to the process, as opposed to, like I've pointed out, the natural? Or as opposed to just saying you don't know what is happening? What is it that makes you so sure that it's connected to a god?
It's the subjective effects. So the way that it allows you to not see other people's faults so much, to extend yourself in charity against
So you're answering you're answering what it does for you. You're still not telling me how that's attached to a deity, because I could say to you, well, it does that because you're more calm and you're more chill, you're less stressed, so you're more likely to view things charitably. I also know plenty of people who pray all the time, and they definitely don't view people more charitably. So I'm still, Seth, sorry, please feel free to interrupt me at any point, but I'm not getting the connection to how do you, here's the question I have for you. How do you know that a God exists?
Well, that's starting a new conversation. If I could just ask the previous thing that you asked. So prayer is
I don't think it's a different conversation. If you're talking about prayer, the petition's being sent to a specific ear, a divine ear, aka deity, God. I think they're linked. So rather than put the cart before the horse, tell us about God.
Or the supernatural, whichever you want to call it. But we can agree that prayer does stuff for the person. As I pointed out, it does natural stuff. We're trying to get to, that's why it's totally part of the conversation. How do you link it to something not natural? Which I assume in your case is a god.
Okay, well, it's because the effects of the prayer are they appear to be directed by an authority. So when we pray, we don't actually know the specifics of how we are to grow
I'm
charity.
so sorry that I
There's
keep
not
interrupting you, but you've got some great sentences, and I want to make sure we don't just pass over them. So you said it seems as though they're directed to an authority, and that's somehow evidence. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, it was the other way around. So it seems that these subjective effects in us are being chosen by an authority. So we make a request.
Okay, so so I don't agree with you that it seems that way. Can you explain to me how you reach the conclusion that it seems that way?
There's a couple of reasons. So one is my own experience of prayer. So we don't understand the way in which it will change us personally before we make the prayer. So personally, I pray the litany to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Now, before I did that, I could sort of imagine I could imagine a version of myself that's just more kind, more charitable. But there's a set of subjective effects, like feelings of deep inner peace. The writers of the church, the doctors of the church, they write about this thing called a wound of love. They also write about ecstasies, and these are some of the effects that appear at unexpected moments. The effects
are not interesting to me until we know the cause, because otherwise I assume they're natural. So again, how did you reach the conclusion that the reason your prayers, specifically yours, and I guess we're running with that being what decides all of these things, how did you get to the point where you're like, well, my prayers seem to go better when they're directed to this, when I just think that they're towards this idea. Therefore, like, God, we're missing like a massive thing here.
Okay, I don't agree with your methodology. So I think the effects are where we begin our interpretation. We don't know the cause of something if we haven't analyzed the effects. The cause is inferred from the set of the observations. So I'd run it the other way to what you said.
But if the cause exists, Adam, then you should be able to provide me something other than... I'm not interested at all in the testimony of nuns and monks and all of these things. I have my own testimonies from prayer, like years and years worth of them. That's not interesting to me. I'm interested in figuring out why you think that these are attached to a deity and what your evidence for that is. Because telling me all these different stories about people praying this way and that way, and they really felt it, and I do better if I pray this way, and so better than if I just think it without a God, so therefore it must be real. Like, surely you can agree that those aren't reasons to believe, because I'll have other people I'll have a kid come up to me. I was a nanny for years. Well, the tooth fairy is real because I thought about it last night before I went to bed, and I wrote the note, and this morning it's there. So how do we get to the point where we know this is something real that exists that has to do with these prayers? Something other than the prayer itself that's coming from a human?
Well, different religions offer different explanations for how these spiritual changes take place in people. Christianity has the Holy Spirit as the explanation. If one model offers a more coherent explanation compared to other models, that's evidence for the claim. So that the claim
but I don't need an explanation for prayer. I think that the effects of it are natural. So because I've not seen any supernatural works come from prayer. So I don't think it requires an explanation. So I don't understand why you are jumping to the explanation of, well, there's a divine source attached to these prayers.
Okay, well, that's where we disagree. So I don't think it's natural.
Yep, and that's why I'm trying to either agree with you or figure out why you think that. Like, that's the whole point of this conversation, is to try to figure out why it is you believe that way. Not what it is that you believe. We got to that. You believe that prayer is a thing, that it works, and that it's attached to a supernatural source. And now I'm trying to figure out how you determined that it's attached to a supernatural force and source and not just the natural. Or just something unknown, for that matter.
Okay. I don't think that naturalism explains the results of prayer. So there's no natural reason why praying would make a person do things which are contradictory to what their evolutionary imperative is. So saying words to yourself wouldn't make yourself give things away to other people, or sort of take a lower status in your society.
Okay, I get where we're missing each other. Tell me this: is it possible that somebody could grow up, being taught a religion, being taught stories about their God, that their God appreciates generosity and all of this stuff, and maybe they don't necessarily believe it, but then later on in life, they start being drawn to faith for some reason, and they decide to start praying, and then, but also keep in mind, this is not a Christian God, this is a totally different God, and then they suddenly feel like really generous and they want to start giving things away. Could it possibly be that that's because they were primed to do that?
Yeah.
Is it possible that is
priming?
it possible that there's a natural explanation for people changing when they pray?
Not if we've ruled it out.
Why would you rule it out if we're considering the possibility? What's your criteria for ruling it out?
Well, if we've found a reason that means that naturalism
What's the
can't explain those
reason
things,
you would rule it out?
that if you believe that the brain is a natural
I
product
don't
of
care what
evolution,
you believe. What's your evidence? What's the reason you would rule it out?
that you've found that one model doesn't explain the effects and the other does.
Is it possible, Adam, that you just don't know, and that you don't know? You don't know why prayer works. Is that possible?
Well, of course, it's possible that I don't know.
Let me jump in. Oh, forgive
Please.
me, promise. Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead.
I think I've asked the same thing over and over.
And we've spent almost 20 minutes with you, Adam, and I'm not sure we're heading in a productive direction. I can see the people in the chat starting to drift, but I want to stick with you for a second. My problem is I'm hearing a series of non sequiturs. I'm hearing a weird contradictory thing. You embrace Christianity, but then you speak about gods in the plural in almost a polytheistic way, or there's something out there, which is more of a deism kind of deal. We talk about prayer as an exercise without an expectation that the prayer is answered. The prayer itself is apparently part of some change within us, but we don't get into the efficacy of prayer. What happens when we pray and nothing happens? Well, wait a minute. If the recipient of the prayer is going to decide which things are going to happen to begin with, then this negates the need to pray, because thy will be done, and it wouldn't make any difference. And if we're praying, we're essentially asking that deity to change its mind. Why would that deity need to change its mind if it was all that smart? And beyond that, this idea of, perception does, in our way, frame our reality. But the idea that evolution doesn't explain pro-social and even charitable behaviors, I think, is false. I think this speaks to our surviving and thriving. I think it makes perfect evolutionary sense. And as Promise has asked a dozen times, if you were going to say it actually has a supernatural source, I think a lot of religions practice it this way, are not answers to the question of what is your evidence. If you can't present it to us in the concrete, then it's just another piece of eyewitness testimony that we can pretty much leave because it contradicts everybody else. Does any of that make sense, Adam?
Well, I think I understand you, but I had my disagreements.
Okie dokie. Before we let you go, can you demonstrate evidence that a God is behind our charitable behavior and that the exercise of prayer is a benefit to us that we could not get through meditation, mindfulness, some other sort of stimuli? Can you provide concrete evidence for us?
I think so.
I am a quiver.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you make a prayer, you do a prayer and you make a request for grace, and you don't
Well,
predict
hang on.
how.
What do you mean by grace? Lord, give me grace, or whoever. What am I requesting?
You're requesting an internal change to yourself, in particular the way that you see other people and the way that you experience your environment. For example,
I
a
went to
person
therapy and changed
who,
how I do all of that. So we're still trying to figure out. We understand what it is that you're talking about. We're trying to understand why you think this has to be some supernatural occurrence.
well, I think it's because the mechanism involved doesn't appear to be natural. It's because it contradicts what evolution would demand. Under evolution, we're meant to just do things that increase
I
our
don't care
evolutionary
about
fitness.
evolution. I don't care about evolution in this conversation. I care about talking about what we can observe and figure out right now, which is I see zero reason to believe that the supernatural exists. I don't have to believe in evolution to not think that there's a supernatural thing.
Adam is literally driving us in a circle. I am
know.
dizzy. I am dizzy, Adam. If you can't provide us evidence, we're going to move on to Oliver, who's next on the switchboard.
Well, you should care about evolution because it exists in a dichotomy with what you're calling the supernatural explanation.
So
the idea
let me
is
be
that
clear. Yes, what I said is I don't care about evolution in this conversation because I really don't. Like, pretend I'm like a rock and you're like we're asking if your best argument is I don't understand evolution, that's not a good argument. I'm going to let you go, but I do recommend that you go listen to this call again because sometimes it is difficult when you're in the conversation. Maybe you didn't recognize some of the questions we were asking you. I think if you want to talk about evolution and all of this, you can call tonight. Forrest is going to be hosting. I think that would be a great conversation to have with Forrest about prayer and how you think that that's, well, we still never got there. Maybe evidence of a God or God. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the point was there. But yeah, we're going to move on to our next caller. I appreciate you trying. I appreciate the respectful conversation, but go back and listen to it. Call back again sometime, and we would be happy to take your call. All right, I guess Adam is gone. Thanks, Adam.
We run
I was
into
gonna
so
let him
many
say goodbye,
challenges with terms. So you and I are like, well, what do you mean by grace? Right? What do you mean by that? What's the
just
nature
jargon.
of prayer? Is prayer, does the exercise of prayer do something for us, or is prayer a petition to receive an answer to prayer? Are we looking for a result, or is the exercise alone the point? And then we get into all of these other things. You know, human beings are great at self-medicating. We can understand why and how religions, so many hundreds of thousands of religions have been spawned as we fill the gaps in our knowledge and we bomb suffering and grief and we alleviate our fear of death and we try to do all of these things, you know, but when you and I say, well, how do you know? And the response is either, well, I believe, I think, or a lot of people believe or think is not evidence. And, you know, that for me. And then he spun from the specific Christian faith into a bunch of faiths. And so I'm like, well, are you a polytheist or is it an equivocal thing? I was lost for a good part of that. I wasn't much help to you, promise.
Yeah,
So.
no, I wasn't much help to any of us. I feel like the basic argument was like, hey, I have viewed people in a shitty way and I started praying and now I don't, so therefore God. But I don't, like, that seems like a really bad argument, so I don't want to assume that's what it was, but that's all I could get out of that entire conversation.
It's a little, I mean, terrifying is not the word, but I'm reminded of a debate that happened at Rogers State University years ago. It was a theist and a non-theist. And I remember the theist, the Christian, was on stage and he said, you know, if I wasn't a Christian, I'd probably be a murderer, right? Meaning that if he didn't have the idea of his God to keep him on the straight and narrow, he would be out there doing tremendously harmful things. And I remember the The atheist on stage looked at him and he said, well, actually, in your case, then I'm kind of glad you're a Christian, right? I'm
Right.
glad you're not a murderer. But it's a terrifying thing that without some third party telling us what pro-social behaviors are, without explaining or even mandating charitable behaviors that we
Right.
we would not know or have, when it is, as you mentioned, so easily explained evolutionarily, to me is quite a stretch.
Yeah, and it's a way of outsourcing the responsibility for, I think, personal growth and all. It's like I couldn't have changed. I couldn't have gotten over this addiction, or I couldn't have changed my mind about how I this bad attitude I have about this, or I couldn't have accomplished this difficult thing in life if it weren't for something supernatural. And then you're discrediting like everything that's actually happening in reality. That's not to say, I also want to point out, obviously, there are a lot of things that we don't have a lot of control over as well, which is another reason why I find the whole prayer argument to be so insulting, because for every guy like Adam who has had his prayers answered, there's a million more that have not, which we didn't even get into that part. I'm
Yeah.
sure Adam's just special, but it's very frustrating. And the lack of answers, I don't know, maybe it was just frustrating to me, but I felt like, are you not hearing the words coming out of my mouth when I'm
You're
asking
so
these
emotional.
questions?
You're so emotional.
That's what it
Promise.
is. My
It's
emotions got the
the
best of me.
devil. You're absolutely right. We count the hits and ignore the misses. And, I find this is the case throughout the faith. So Bob goes to the grocery store 100 times. And on the 101st time, he bumps into a guy he hasn't seen in 40 years that they went to high school with, and they reconnect and develop a close friendship. If you're in the faith, you are primed to say, God brought us to this moment where we had reconnected after all this time. And what are the chances? In a city this big, we actually saw each other. We bumped into each other in the cereal aisle. I mean, wow. So thank you, Jesus, for bringing this person back into must have brought it back in my life at a very specific time. This
Right.
must be divinely inspired. There's a reason for that. And we ignore the fact that you went to the store 100 times before that and you didn't see
And
each
it
other.
never happened. Right.
Was it John Loftus who has written a book about miracles? And his take, I think, is a good one, where the amount of encounters and experiences, countless experiences and encounters we have every day, if some sort of serendipitous convergence did not happen, that would be an anomaly. But honestly, we are going to bump into people. We're going to have good fortune. We're going to have something that appears destined because it happened. But we have so many experiences, most of which are inconsequential, or we don't connect that dot, that whenever a dot does happen, that's just sort of cause and effect. It's a ratio thing, not a miracle thing. And I find that interesting.
For sure. And of course, it's divine when you run into somebody in the grocery store, but if you get in a car wreck on the way home, that was just an attack from the enemy.
Yeah.
So,
And then if you're horribly wounded, you should have died. If you're barely grazed, you should have been horribly wounded. If you're killed, God brought you to a better place and we'll all be reunited. There's no scenario where God gets off the hook in that deal. So,
that's, ugh.
yeah.
Maybe we'll have a better call with Oliver. We've got Oliver, a theist, on the line. Are you ready for this call?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. Hey, Oliver, you are live on the line. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Thomas and Seth. It's good to hear from both of you guys. I'm happy that I had the time today to call in. I've been wanting to talk to you all.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling. Is there something, it says you're a theist, so of course we're going to want to know, what God you believe in and why. Is that kind of the topic you're calling in on?
Well, I talked to the screener, and she's a very nice lady, by the way. And I told her that I wanted to talk about belief and why we believe in the things that we do believe in.
Sure.
What would you like to
I-
tell
I
us?
just hope
Oh,
that-
keep walking on your promise. Forgive me.
Oh,
It's
no,
two
it's okay. We got
hosts.
this delay.
And we're all like, go ahead. I'll sit
All the
back.
talking heads.
I'll sit
Oliver,
back.
I think the main thing is we've got to keep the call kind of going a certain pace. So are you okay if we just ask you first, like, which God is it that you believe in?
Absolutely. So I believe in the Christian God.
Okay, cool. And I think my next question would just be why?
That is actually,
Although,
I'm sorry about the call, hon.
first, I am going to ask: Are you driving, or are you just near cars?
No, I'm parked.
Okay, great. Sorry, continue.
So I guess I have been questioning myself a little bit about why I believe what I believe. I wanted to talk to specifically you, Promise, and Seth, because you guys have been on both sides of the coin. You said you were a very devoted Christian, and both of you were. And yeah, I don't know. I'm probably not even answering your question. I'm sorry.
No, why are you a Christian?
Well, I gave my life to Christ in 2017, and in the first 2 years, I really didn't know anything about the Bible. And I
Well,
met
hang on, hold on. Forgive
a
me,
guy in
Oliver.
my church friend.
I'm a momentum guy, and I want you to be able to finish your story. But there was a reason that you said the salvation prayer to the Christian God to get saved and become a Christian. What I'm curious about is why? What convinced you that you needed to accept the Christian God through the salvation prayer at that time?
That is something I'm trying to figure out right now because, as you guys know, when you're in the Christian faith and you just believe it already, so it's hard for me to see how people do not believe.
Well, let me
I
ask a
have
couple of
been questioning,
questions.
like,
Hang on, Oliver. Be
okay,
patient with me. Just indulge me, and I promise I will give you all the oxygen in the room in just a second. Can I ask, what part of the country were you born in?
U.S.
And were you born in a religious area?
No,
What part? Can you give me a state?
yeah, I was born in Colorado.
Okay, well, it's relatively religious. What was the religion of your parents?
My dad was Catholic, not practicing. We never talked about God or religion or the Bible. We went to mass like Christmas, around Christmas time.
Hmm. But the religion that was in your sphere was Bible based. That's fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I
Okay,
never knew any other Christians.
sure. So if you had been born in Yemen, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, what are the chances that you would have eventually said the Christian salvation prayer? Do you think it might be more probable that you would have been a Muslim?
Absolutely.
What do you think the reason for that is?
Our culture, the culture I was in.
Okay. So is it possible then that your culture here had primed you to lean into the Christian salvation prayer, a Bible based religion, because there was some expectation, because you had been, I don't know, I like the word primed to do that. Like, do you think it's fair that maybe there were influences that kind of nudged you that direction when you didn't actually know for sure the Christian God was real?
I would say that's possible, but I really didn't know anyone. Like, I didn't talk to any Christians, and I didn't know anything about the faith.
Well, still, the United States, what's the primary religion here, whether it's Protestant or, whether you're Lutheran, Episcopal, Catholic, whatever? We're talking about Bible based religions and hybrids of
Right. Okay.
Christianity. Okay. I mean, so you would have probably held to the Quran in Pakistan, but here it's probably going to be expected that it will be the Bible. Did you see here? Did you find there was concrete evidence for that God? Some provable way to say, yes, this is it, before you dropped to your knees and said, please come into my heart, save me, and take me to heaven?
No, the only answer I can give you is the one that I've learned from apologists about no one comes to the Father unless God draws them. I just believed. Can't really explain it.
There's a line, was it James Randi once said that no amount of belief makes something a fact. So if I believe something, Oliver, does that make it true?
No.
Is it possible then that someone could believe in the supernatural, a God, a religion, a holy book, and that not be true?
Yes.
I think that's more than fair. I'll hand it off to Promise.
Oliver, you said
Thomas, do you have
you're
any questions
questioning.
for me?
Yeah, you said you're questioning stuff yourself. So are you calling in more from a position of you're, you know, thinking or you believe that a God is real and you think we should believe it as well? Or are you trying to explore that belief? Is it a belief that you think is rational? Where are you at with this?
Well, it just, I think I've been questioning for a while. And like I said, I wanted to call in because I know that you and Seth have both been in the Christian world and out of the Christian world. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts because, like, my Catholic brothers on Discord, they believe the Apocrypha is spiritually inspired, and I simply don't. And so I think that's one of the things that got my gears turning about why I believe what I believe. All I know at the end of the day is I don't want to make you guys dizzy. And Thomas, it would have been so wonderful if I would have known you as a Christian, you too, Seth, because yeah, that's just my Christian worldview. I want others to not leave the faith.
I'll ask you this, Oliver. Do you care if what you believe is true?
I do.
And how convinced are you that Christianity is true on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say a 10.
Okay, what is it that makes it a 10 for you? Like, what makes you so sure that it is true?
Without referring to scripture?
With what?
No, you can't quote from the book to
Without,
prove the book. No. We don't want
Yeah.
to. That's a closed loop, closed system. How do you know?
right, I understand. Dude, the only answer I got is from scripture.
Is that a good
I
reason
really
to
don't know right
believe?
now.
Yeah, but is a claim a good reason to believe something?
No, you have to do your research.
So did you do your research and is that why you're convinced?
That and personal testimony, but I know that that's not a sufficient answer for Seth and Thomas.
What did your research produce? What evidence did you discover?
It just got me more into believing it
I'm not asking where it
as it is.
propelled you. I'm asking what research did you do and what evidence did you discover?
I'm going to have to call back some other time.
Well,
because I
consider
don't
that
know.
question. Consider that, what
Yeah, I think that's a
research
good
did
thing to think about.
we all do? What did we discover? How
Okay.
can we demonstrate it? And you don't strike me as a 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. I'm not going to tell you where you are in your journey, but if you call and you say, well, you've had some questions and you're not, no, I don't know. I'm on a journey. That doesn't strike me as absolute belief. It sounds to me like there might be some cracks going on there, some fissures. I think, the Bible
You know
talks
what? It's
about.
completely possible. Oh, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
go
bro.
ahead.
No. Go ahead. It's completely possible. What?
It's completely possible that a year from now, or maybe 3 years from now, I'll still be a Christian, or I may construct completely.
It's an odd conversation. I mean, you sound to me like you're preparing yourself to not be a Christian.
I hope that's not where I'm at right now.
Well, I'm not really sure what
Because
to
I
do with it.
put,
I'm not hearing absolute conviction. You strongly believe, but you might not believe in 3 years. You believe the Bible by quoting the Bible. I'm finding myself a little bit frustrated. I will just simply say this, and then anybody can take it anywhere. We can call it. But I mean, no amount of belief makes something a fact. So, does it matter if
I
it's
understand.
true, which is a great question, I think stands. So, when we go out, let's say, well, what is my evidence and how do I know that? You tell me you need to call back. That tells me that you may not have researched and you may not have discovered the evidence. Well, that's a great starting point. Is that fair, Oliver?
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm groovy.
Cool. Well, Oliver, it sounds like
Cool.
you've got some stuff to think about, and unless you've got any questions for us, we're going to move on to our next caller.
Well, I mean, so do you guys ever think that leaving the faith was just extreme burnout on Christian
No.
doctrine?
No.
Okay.
So the reason I left the faith is because I realized I didn't have any good reasons to believe that it was true. I had
Not just
every
All right.
reason to stay, actually. It really kind of made things difficult for me for a while when I left.
Right. And like Seth said earlier, that those pastors in the pulpits right now that don't believe anymore, but they don't know anything else. They've been in ministry the whole life. And I don't know, I just hope that I can offer compassion to those who are not in the faith. But it was wonderful talking to you guys.
see you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Oliver.
You too.
So often when I deal with, deal sounds superior. When I'm engaging people and they are, whether they're quoting the Bible to me to prove the Bible or whatever, a lot of times if they hit a point of frustration, and I'm sure you've heard this one, they'll say, "The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God." As if this is an argument and it's really designed as a conversation stopper. You and I are doing our shtick, right? How do you know that? What's your evidence? How do you reconcile this? How do we know what's true? Does it matter to you? What if it's not true? And they say, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. So it's discrediting the witness, supposedly. And I thought, what a weird argument. Because anybody could make it, right? Muslim can come talk to the Christian. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no Allah. And the Hindu could say, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no Brahma. And I thought, it's an empty calorie statement. There's nothing in there. And he didn't do that. Oliver didn't do that, but it just brought that to my mind when I deal with apologists. So,
Yeah. Oliver was so kind, and I appreciate that. I do kind of get the like, and I don't want to project this in case it's not true, but there is like this, well, I'm just like one of the nice, good ones kind of vibe, and I don't want to be confrontational, and I don't want to, you know, I I was getting some of those vibes, and it's confusing for me because I think if you really believe that Christianity is true, then that implies that you believe you have a responsibility to share that with others, whether it causes discomfort or a frustrating conversation or not, you know? So it's interesting to me when we have these like, I'm happy when it's non-combative, but non-combative to a point where it's like, yeah, well, maybe I'll deconstruct someday, maybe I won't, I don't know. And it's like, I don't know. So I feel like
this
Jesus, like it's the lukewarm water I'm going to spit out of my mouth.
is not doesn't smell of true conviction. It's not like I know it's true and I'm an absolute believer, right? And which is what the
Right.
Bible commands. By the way, the Bible, to command us to believe something is crazy. I could say, hey, promise, I command you to not believe in gravity. Well, she could profess that she doesn't believe, but that's already happening in the brain. She freaking knows there's gravity. So I find beyond the idea that, we are mandated, obligated to love God. How do you command someone to love you? But we are then commanded to believe. Well, I either believe or I don't. What I admit might be different, but I either buy it or I don't. And with Oliver, I didn't say, maybe he just called to hear his voice on the air, but I didn't sense true conviction. It just seemed rather, oh, that's so good,
Yeah.
right? Lukewarm, right out of the Bible, right? You are either
Yeah.
hot nor cold. If you are lukewarm, I will spew you out of my mouth. I heard some spewage going on there with Oliver.
If
That's
the
just,
line ever needs to open like a TBN style network where we're just preaching,
oh
I feel
yeah.
like you and I could really,
Oh, we could talk the talk
we
and
could
walk
do
the
that.
walk.
Yeah.
We could do it. Yeah, reflex.
Well, we do have another theist caller, and we have enough time for a few more callers after that, maybe like 1 to 3, depending on how the call goes. So if you want to try, you can. 720-619-2288. If you're a theist, you'll get priority. But Seth, if you're ready, we'll talk to Sam.
Let's do it.
Hey,
Hello.
Sam, you are live on the line. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. So what did you want to talk to us about today?
Well, I had wanted to talk to about the prompt that Christianity is no, that America is a Christian nation. I don't know if you had wanted me to answer the same questions as the other call. I could tell you very quickly about why I'm Christian.
That would be great. If you want to share, so you believe in the Christian God. Yeah, if you want to tell us why you believe that the Christian God exists, I'm happy to hear that.
Oh, well, yeah, just to get to it very quickly, fully honest, mainly because I was raised in it. I haven't really moved too far away from it. I have made some adjustments to my faith, but yeah, I guess that's the most honest and quick I could be.
I like the honesty and the speed. Seth, do you have any questions you want to?
I mean, I'm not, again, hearing true conviction. Did you dig into it and discover that it makes sense and the evidence points to Christianity, and so you accepted it for that reason?
No.
Okay, well, why'd you accept it if you didn't have a good reason?
Oh, to be close to my family.
So for you, you found utility in embracing a religious model that would connect you to your tribe or family who were also in that religious model. It was a point of familiarity and connection. Is that correct?
Yes.
But that's not.
So,
Go ahead, promise. Go ahead.
would you say then that you're just like what they're calling now a cultural Christian, where you practice it, but you don't necessarily believe it?
I have emotions within me that I guess would be consistent because, like, you would catch me throughout the majority of the day, like even at work, like singing worship songs. I don't sing it in English though because I've taken some notes from the show.
I'll tell you, I sing worship songs sometimes still because I was a worship leader. So every now and then they get stuck in my head, but I definitely don't believe any of it. I guess my question would be like, if there was such thing as a 100% accurate lie detector test, and somebody asked, do you believe that the Christian God is real? That Christianity is true? What would the test say?
Oh, I have no idea. Because I've also
Okay,
had like I
so
called into the show before.
mhm.
Oh, I called into the show before, and they was telling me like, if they learn the things that I learned, like they wouldn't have the motivation to still be like into singing the song and singing about Yahweh. So I don't know. Like I have no idea what the lie detector would say because I could go ahead and mention some of your critiques of the Bible, but yet also I still have the emotions to where like I don't know, like to still have those emotions. Like, does that mean that you
believe it or not.
Hey, Sam,
No.
I see 14 total calls on the switchboard, and you said you just called a show previously. Can I ask what the end zone is? When you dial into these shows, you say you don't really believe. What's the point? Like, what do you get from this?
There are some points which I guess I still argue with my, Christian family and Christian friends, and just some of these points, I guess, like you all might have more knowledge, and I guess like that would help me, like to go ahead and like argue towards them for some of the things that are bad, like being able to learn to argue about what Exodus is really good, and just being like, well, if you totally accept the book Bible, well, then that means that you accept the slavery of your people because they have brought the heathens amongst them, and just like the book says. But oh,
I don't have
I
any
guess that
idea what
doesn't
we're
answer
talking
your
about, brother.
question.
I have no idea what we're
It
talking
sounds
about.
it sounds like you're still,
We,
figuring out a lot of things, but I do want to give you the chance because it says you called in because you wanted to argue the point that I think if I'm understanding, you believe that the US is a Christian nation. Is that true?
yes.
Okay. So if you have a pretty concrete opinion there, that might be more interesting. I know Seth was talking about maybe taking a call like that earlier, so this might be
Okay.
the conversation. So yeah, I guess make your
Oh, yes,
case.
and have no.
And then
Yeah, I was saying, even if you're not even like a Christian and profess to be an atheist, like just the culture of the nation of it having so much Christianity in it goes ahead and affect you to go ahead and still have some of the same behaviors that Christianity will make you have, like believing in punitive justice. Like I believe that some of the consent that we have for the prison system that we have being punitive is some Christianity leashing out even amongst the atheists in our society.
So when an Islamic culture has a punitive society, somebody does some discretion, they're imprisoned, have their hands and feet cut off, beheaded, whatever. That's a hardcore punitive culture. Would that make Islam true?
Mm-hmm. Well, you said like we're not arguing the truth of Christianity. We're arguing if America is a Christian nation.
Okay, promise, do you mind if I jump in real fast?
no, please, this is what I've been waiting for.
Again, I don't want to monopolize. Well, if I'm just going to give you some bullet points. It'll be fast, so I'm not trying to overwhelm. You can go back and watch and listen once the show is done. Historians believe George Washington was actually a deist. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. In the Jefferson Bible, he actually possessed a Bible where he went in and took a knife and he razored out all of the supernatural stuff, all the miracles of Jesus. He liked Jesus more as a philosopher, but didn't believe in Jesus, the God. That Bible is now on display at the Smithsonian. The Constitution of the United States is a godless document. The only mention of religion separates the church and the state. God was not originally on the money. It was added to coins just after the Civil War to the paper money in 1956 by an act of Congress. The pledge wasn't written until the late 1800s by a socialist. He did believe in Jesus, but Francis Bellamy did not include under God in the original pledge. And even the founders didn't have a pledge, right? And the reason that the United States, or one of the reasons the United States was established, was to escape a theocratic government, the divine right of kings. Therefore, the Constitution begins with the words, "We, the people." We are a pluralistic democracy. If we were a Christian nation, that would essentially make any non-Christian in this country a second-class citizen, because Christians would be the ruling class, in total contradiction to the intent of the founding fathers. So that's my spiel. Does any of that resonate with you?
I was familiar with the information that you said at the beginning about the Thomas Jefferson Bible. With the second half about not needing to be a Christian to not be a second class citizen. I don't know. Maybe I just live like I do live in the Bible though. Like I understand legally you don't have to be a Christian to have like full rights and everything, but because of like the way the majority of people are, it kind of still is so.
You and I agree. If Christian law is the law of the land, then Christianity dictates what everybody else does, making them second-class citizens. If you have the Ten Commandments up in schools and on courthouses, but you're not allowing any of the other commandments from other religions, that is favoring one religion over all of the others, making them second class. Time and time again, if the rights of human beings, whether it's reproductive rights, gay marriage, etc., are determined by a single theocratic religion, that makes everybody else second class. That makes sense, right?
Yes. Also, I think they just changed that law in Kansas and Florida to start posting the Ten Commandments in schools.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with you that they're trying. I think they're trying to turn the U.S. into a quote Christian nation. Which version of Christianity? Nobody knows. I think they're definitely trying to do that. I can't speak for Seth, but my argument would be that it was not founded as a Christian nation, and that it should not be a Christian nation, and that would be harmful, not helpful. The other thing you mentioned earlier on in your argument, talking about how the justice system works, which I have a whole thing I could go off on that, which I won't, but claiming that that's a sign that it's following Christianity in some way. But I don't understand how that would be following Christianity, because if that was true, then the way the law would work in the US would be that everybody do whatever you want, and when you die, you're going to find out what your punishment is, because justice isn't going to happen while you're alive, because free will.
Yes, it does. God commands us to go ahead and stone people who sin. And if you don't send them, you're just as guilty. You're supposed to punish people while they're alive. You're not supposed to just leave it up to God. That's how we're leaving from what the Bible says.
If you're talking about
and
the
just
Old
doing
Testament,
our own thing.
then we would be stoning people for the most ridiculous. Like, do you know the laws? It sounds like you might. Do you? And in
Yes,
that case,
I do.
then in that case, then you know that the U.S. is not a Christian nation, because we are not doing those things. We are not stoning women for having a second husband. We are not stoning and killing people. We're also not turning people to pillars of salt for lying. So
we have slavery.
Still, do what?
We have slavery.
I have no idea. Sam, you're saying we're a Christian nation and you're selling Christianity, and then you're telling us about the scriptures in the Christian Bible that are bad. Slavery, bad. I don't understand. Are you supporting Christianity, or are you criticizing Christianity?
I'm arguing how America does a lot of things that are Christian, that are in the Bible. I'm not trying to argue that Christianity is good or bad. I'm just trying to say America is definitely Christian. We're doing a lot of things that are in the book.
Did you not hear? Like, the intent was not to be Christian. The Christian nationalists want us to be Christian. But the minute we become a Christian nation, the minute America becomes a Christian nation, we will cease to be America as intended. Okay, Sam?
We began as a Christian nation, buying the heathen from amongst us. We enslaved
Jesus
black people,
Christ.
just like in the Bible where it says.
I'm hearing a seminar caller who is a serial caller, and we've got 3 in the queue. Are you okay if we move? Are you good? Do you want to?
Yeah,
continue?
I am.
You can move on. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Sam, I think you should actually consider calling Jimmy's show after this. He might want to take this call.
Yeah. Give him to Jimmy.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Jimmy Snow. You're welcome, Jimmy.
I think that's more the topic that they go for over there anyway.
You're welcome, Jimmy.
But we do have some theists. We've got a theist saying Christianity is true. I'm fascinated to hear why, if you're ready for that.
I'm in. Yeah, let's do it.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Hey DB, you are live on the line. So it says here you believe Christianity is true. We would love to hear why you think it's true.
Thank you. Yes. Well, first of all, I believe in God. I believe in God. I feel this natural revelation reveals that. I feel the nature of man is evidence to that also. This we are clearly a spiritual creature, and that spirit had to come from a spiritual source, I believe,
Pause
not from
real quick.
stardust and protoplasm. Yep.
Are you reading
Pause
from
real
a
quick.
script, DB? What's
What,
going on?
yeah, what do you mean by spiritual? I need you to define that because that's such a really all over the place
Yeah.
word. So I just want to know what you mean when you say spiritual. Because you said we are clearly spiritual. I would disagree based on how you define that word.
Okay, great. I think that man has the ability to have thoughts and have sort of concepts and rules and regulations, if you will, that transcend the secular. So we're talking about, when you're talking about morality, to me, that
I don't know what you mean by
spiritual realm.
transcend the secular.
So things on the earth that you're working towards survival, is trying to eat, drink, defecate, reproduce, all that stuff is what you do for natural, just for survival stuff. You also have the relationships aspect. So is it proper to
so those actually help
promiscuous?
us survive as well. We know this. If babies aren't held, they can die. So that all of those things, first of all, we have some misunderstandings on how the world works because something doesn't have to have like, oh, we're eating or we're shitting and therefore it's of value. There are all kinds of like abstract things have a lot of values to humans as well. So I'm sorry that I'm interrupting, but I'm trying to stop you from making claim after claim after claim without us getting to, okay, how did you reach that conclusion?
Understood. Not a problem. I get it. Yeah. So it's for the natural functions that pertain to the body, to the material realm. So again, you're surviving and so forth. So the matriarchal procedures a woman does to have the baby survive, the nurture and so forth, and the father providing. Those aren't necessarily in that spiritual realm. But when you're talking about morality, what's right and what's wrong, is it okay to steal? Is it okay to sleep around? Things that are a little bit more
I think it's totally
abstract.
okay to sleep around, but you, I'm guessing, don't.
Okay.
So which one of us is right, and how would we reach the conclusion of who is right?
Right, great. Now, is that so? To me, that's a spiritual concept. So, have I made that point sort of clear that if we're in the realm of now spirituality deciding?
No, to be honest,
tangible.
to be honest, what it sounds like you're saying to me is if you don't understand how something works in reality, then it must be supernatural. Or maybe you're trying to say if something is subjective, that it's spiritual. Either way, it sounds like it is a very subjective thing that you're taking. So instead of going down that route, why don't we get to how do you know that the supernatural exists?
I would have said just by man's behavior. Well, it's a man's behavior that there's an influence upon us that defies our intellect. We are by magnitudes, orders of magnitude, the most intellectual creature on the planet, but yet we act in the most absurd of ways. We will smoke ourselves to death, cigarette-wise. We'll drink ourselves to death. We'll do ostentation. We'll buy bling and so forth that we can't afford just for the sake of showing off, the sake of impressing on a superficial level that leads to our destruction eventually. And this is prevalent. I'm not talking about very isolated situations. This is throughout history, man. Alcoholism, drug abuse, kidnapping, the slave trade, things that are antithetical to survival, man persists in doing on a predominant level. I think
so
this
how
is
do we
evidence
get
that there's an
to
influence upon us.
So how is that evidence of the supernatural? Nothing that you've said so far has made me think, oh, there must be something supernatural.
There's an influence upon him that defies his intellect. So he's not thinking in a rational manner when he does these things.
How do you know that?
He would drink himself to death. Well, I would think becoming an alcoholic,
How
losing
do you
your job,
know?
losing your
So,
family, your
DB, how
health.
do you know that the
Is,
reason somebody wouldn't drink themselves to death isn't a very natural reason? For example, maybe they suffer from chronic illness and they're in a lot of pain, or they're in a lot of mental distress all the time. And when they drink, their brain rewards a certain part of it that makes them want to drink again. And if they don't drink again, they're going to start feeling sick. So then they have to keep drinking. So then they go on and on and on, and they don't have community, or they endured some type of abuse, and the drinking is the only thing helping them. And then one day they take it too far and now they've drank themselves to death. Those are all very natural, normal reasons for doing something like that. So where's the supernatural in that?
not at all. That's very irrational. You see what it leads to. There's nothing compelling a person to pick up a bottle, put it to its mouth, and drink from it besides his own volition. He doesn't have, so there's nothing compelling them besides a weak character. It's a weak character in any circumstance. You brought up a very isolated case. We have many alcoholics that do it just out of hedonism, strictly partying. They party animals.
Hang on.
Great.
I know
Another
people that have
another
died.
great example. If people are doing something because it makes them feel good, how is that supernatural?
Because it's more detrimental than it is good. It takes more than it gives. I mean,
This is one of the
that just-
worst
hang on.
arguments I have ever
Am I
heard.
hearing that the fact that people will engage in what you consider to be destructive behaviors would mean that when they engage in something that is constructive and productive and logical and beneficial, that means that
Right.
that has to come from the divine? Because on our own, all we would do is be reckless. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no. I'm saying the fact that man can act predominantly in such an irrational manner. This, to me, is evidence that, again, that there's an influence upon us. We're talking now of the spiritual warfare that goes within a man's mind.
Okay,
That's
hang
what I'm
on.
trying
Hold
to,
on, DB.
make that
Look, I'm
conclusion.
not interested in
Yeah.
a sermon. Okay? Let's say
Right.
that there is a supernatural connection point to the natural mind. That should be measurable,
Right.
right? So how would we measure?
Quantifiable?
How would we be able to measure? How would we be able to detect and determine if a supernatural agent was impacting the human brain?
Well, I said that the proof is in the pudding. If a man,
I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't hear any proof.
It's not.
And
You
I'm
haven't
hungry
given
for
a
pudding.
single bit of it. Yeah.
Tell me,
This is-
what evidence do you have of the supernatural impacting the natural?
is kidnapping wicked? A wicked thing that is irrational.
Are you capable of having an honest
conversation?
conversation, DB? Are you capable of an honest conversation? I understand that you have some strong moral positions and things that you are bothered by that you think are good or bad. We're going to all have our varying positions on all of these things. That doesn't matter. We're asking, can you detect the supernatural? Not what is DB's opinion on kidnapping or having a cocktail.
You'd think there would be a consensus about what is evil in this world and what is not. You would think I'm talking to two adults right now that could at least, we can have a consensus on what is just morally incorrect. Racism. Do we agree with that there's no explanation, no rational justification for
We don't
that?
all agree. That's why there's racists that are out there. We don't all
Who
agree.
would not agree? Well, this is a wicked
Racists
people. I'm
don't
talking about
agree.
the
Like,
depraved. This is the
According
evidence
to
that you're
you,
not detecting.
DB,
Are you giving it a rational explanation to the race?
Well,
Hang
I'm going
on.
to mute you for a second. I'm muting
Oh, you
him.
and I were both going for the mute
Oh,
button at the
yes.
same time.
Look at
promise.
us.
You and I.
Finally. If you had a specific question lined up, go for it. I just needed to
this idea that
stop for a moment.
Bigotry, outgrouping is tribal. Tribalism is explained evolutionarily. You know, he's making all of these claims, and apparently, according to the chat, he is a regular, and he's called into different shows. I suspect enjoys hearing the sound of his own voice. I don't know. That's just a suspicion. But this idea that, you know, we can't explain, why would a flawed brain and flawed thinking somehow prove the divine or the supernatural? To me, that makes no sense. It's easier to say Oh, we have flawed brains. We have flawed thinking. We have all of these other, there were all of these other, what a great example with the alcoholic, right? I mean, if somebody had depression and they were self-medicating through the day, even in a maladaptive way, but they were balming it with alcohol, that's explainable in the natural. It may be a destructive behavior, but we can understand it without having to assign gods and monsters to it. DB
Right.
is not interested in talking about that at all. Makes me crazy.
And another thing, it's only destructive subjectively because we've decided as a society to have, like, for most of us, that it's, we want to keep people alive and healthy. But that's still, like, if somebody wants to just go out and drink themselves to death for fun and they think that was a good life, like, there's nothing out in the cosmos saying that that wasn't. So, anyways, I'm going to see if I can get kind of a straight answer from him. DB, I'm going to bring you back on. I hope that you're listening right now. My question for you, and I'll give you the chance to answer it. If we can't answer it, we will move on to another caller. But my question for you is, what is your evidence that a God exists without using any of your own opinions on morality? What is your evidence that a God exists? How would Seth or myself be able to know that a God exists? Let's go with that one.
He's
Are you
still
there,
muted.
DB?
Still
Oh.
muted,
My bad.
which may be preferential.
Hello?
Okay, there we go.
Hello?
Okay, yes.
Oh,
Did you
hi.
hear my question?
I did hear your question, yes. So how would you and Seth come to the conclusion that God exists? I haven't a flipping clue right now. You two are out there. Nothing seems to work with you two. So I got no idea, to be honest with you. Ciao.
Okay, so
See you later. Bye.
so DB, I'll have a better question unless you're running away. Oh, okay. That is wild. I think he just wanted to do his judgmental
Come
preaching
in
thing.
and essentially theologically masturbate. Look, I'm sick and tired of people telling me that questions of the spirit and the soul are not scientific questions. It's the ultimate get out of reasoning free card. Well, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't smell it, it doesn't exist in the natural, so you can't lab test it, is bullshit. Dr. Julian Mussolino is a neuroscientist, and he's written a book called The Soul Fallacy. And it's a heavy read because he's a heavy guy. He's a really thick, super smart neuroscientist. But he makes a great point that questions of the spirit and the soul are scientific, meaning that at some point, if my identity, my drives, my beliefs, all of these things that comprise me for better or worse, come to me through the spiritual, the metaphysical, whatever, there will still be a reaction point in the natural physical flesh brain that we can see. And you could measure that in a lab. I am convinced that spirit and soul questions are science questions that should be able to be testable and replicable in the lab. And I'll stand by that.
Yep. And I'm not afraid of things that we can't explain either. We used to think that fire and lightning were, some kind of magical things until we figured out better. I'm sure there's all kinds of things today that are fun to wonder about that we don't have answers to yet. But that's the key word, is yet. We just don't know yet. And if you aren't able to say, I don't know, which another problem is a lot of these callers, they just don't know. There are people that do know. Then you are still not giving us the reason why you thought this was the appropriate thing to fill the gap with. But
unfortunately, promise, we're unreachable. We're too far gone.
Yeah, we're
There's
just
nothing,
too far gone. I think
there's
it's probably
nothing
because
that
when
will
he
convince
said
us.
people
Just
sleep
write us
around,
off.
and I said I think that's fine. That
Write us
probably
off. Yes, so sad.
was not good. We've got another theist caller. We do have a hard cutoff time at, well, it's 11 p.m. my time. It will be, I don't know, whatever time it is over there.
Wow.
A little over a half hour. We'll be wrapping this show, but you guys should stick around so that you can go listen to Jimmy on Calling It Now. Also, please don't forget to like the video right now if you haven't already. Comment, subscribe, all of the things. It helps all of us keep doing what we do here on the line and in our own work. Let's bring on Peter for possibly our last call. We'll see how it goes. Hey, Peter, you are live on the Sunday show. How are you today?
Good. How you doing? Hello?
Pretty good. Doing well.
Good. You here?
What's your... Yes, it says you're calling about reasons for being Christian. So maybe you are one of the callers that's going to tell us, let me ask you, do you believe that Christian...
I believe Jesus lived. I believe that he, something happened in the tomb. You know, I believe that I'm alive in that. Absolutely.
Do you believe that a God exists?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Why? Why do you believe that a God exists?
Oh, where do I start? You know, well, I think I have to take it from my own experience, my own life. You know.
Well, I'm stuck on what
the
happened
journey
in the
that-
tomb. Hey, what happened in the tomb? Because that sounds vaguely naughty. What happened in the tomb?
I think so. I think Jesus was spontaneously combusted. I think something happened there. You know, like I really do. I mean, we got the receipt. We have the shroud.
Wait a minute. Wait a
That's the
minute.
Hold
wait,
on.
Wait a minute.
We went so many places all of a sudden.
Is Jesus spontaneously combusted?
Something happens. Vaporized, spontaneously combusted, radiated out. I don't know.
So,
One of those
okay,
things happened, though.
here's a couple of problems I've got, besides the spontaneous combustion,
All right.
which we'll get there. I've been to Israel. I was a Christian. We were obsessed with Israel. That somehow happens. And so I've been to Jesus's tomb, both of them, because there's two, and they don't know which, they claim. So I don't know which one you think, if any of them was the actual tomb of Jesus. And then the shroud, there is nothing like, how would you know that shroud came from Jesus?
I think that the proof is in the pudding right now. I mean,
it isn't.
Right now,
there's no pudding. It's spontaneously combusted.
You look at the shroud. Hold on. You look at the shroud. It can, with our scientific knowledge that we have today, with everything we have, nobody can duplicate that. There is something about that shroud that a receipt was left. That's how I look at it.
Peter, at best,
And whatever happened in that tomb,
no. If we're going to talk about the shroud, at best, you have a very old piece of cloth with a blood imprint in it. Now tell me how this is evidence that a God exists. How did you trace this cloth back to God? Because there isn't a connection. Spoiler.
Hold on.
No. Don't say hold on to. Okay. I'm going to pause. So I'm muting you for a second. You don't get to say hold on to us. We're hosts on the show. It's also International Women's Day, so I get to talk if I want to. And also any day I get to talk if I want to. I'm hosting on the show. So don't say hold on. If I'm asking you a question, it's for a reason. So my question is, how did you get from a bloody old cloth, because we don't have Jesus's DNA to go like test it against. Like that's basic forensics. It's like you have to have two forms of the DNA to like compare.
And
so
it
tell
may
me
not
how
be
you
blood at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how much we don't know about this. Tell me how you figured out that there's a God attached at the end of it.
Hello?
You're
Hello?
here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just I look at the evidence of what they have. That's really, it's hard to prove that something didn't happen. That cloth is not something that is beyond worldly. Yeah.
Are you able to answer my question, Peter? Are you able to answer my question? My question is, how do you know that the Shroud of Turin has a divine source?
And that it's Jesus specifically.
I would have to say, from the scientific knowledge that we have on where that shroud was derived from.
What scientific knowledge? No scientist has come forward and said this shroud came from heaven. There's nothing, everything that they have ever claimed about the shroud has been a natural thing. So how did you connect this to a divine source?
Well, if it was a natural thing, that they would have been able to duplicate it by now, but they have not been able to do that. And
Peter,
if you look at the body on the shroud,
Peter,
yes.
let's say that it
Yes,
was a
sir.
dude. All right. How do you know it wasn't a guy in the first century named Kevin?
Because of all the crucifixion marks, and it duplicates how Jesus
Lots
would
of
have
people
gotten.
were
Rome crucified
crucified.
100,000 people. I'll bet one of those dudes could have been named Kevin. How do you know it wasn't Kevin?
Okay, but it goes with the story of something happening in that tomb. And
Yeah, where he spontaneously combusted. What if Kevin had
How did the shroud
spontaneously
survive the
whatever.
spontaneous combustion?
Well, I'm just saying a vaporation, a radiation, a spontaneous, whatever it was in that tomb, something happened. Something happened there, and we have the receipt. I'm just going
What-
to leave that there with my Christian experience. Now, Jesus, do I believe Jesus was God still? I would have to say no. But something
Okay, then
happened
let's
in that
forget
tomb
then
with
let's forget this spontaneous combustion magical cloth witch tomb we don't know story. So you think a god exists. Why do you think that a god exists?
Well, on September 14th, 2007, I died and was brought back to life. I actually had a massive heart attack and was brought back to life. I had AED put on me and they shocked me back. And after that, I woke up and everybody was yelling and screaming above me. And I said to them, "We all shut the F up. I'm trying to sleep." And they said, "You weren't sleeping, you were dead." It was after that, though, that things started to happen within my own life that I had to look at a creator of the universal realm. And so what had happened is I had a series of dreams telling me I was a shaman, and I was born a shaman, and that I had to dance this one dance, which would be 1 year later from the day of my death, which was September 14th, 2007. So on that day, I had to dance this dance as a shaman. So on September 14th, 2008, I had everything set to go. Everything that my dreams had to tell me about that dance that I had to do, I prepared for, from the way I dressed to the way what I wore to everything.
I don't want to enter. The part of this story is so fascinating, but I believe I asked the wrong question because this is so fantastical sounding. First of all, I'm so sorry that you experienced a health crisis. I hope you're okay now. But everything else, like you could just, well, that too, you could just be making all of this up. So what I should have asked you, and that's my bad, is why should me too. Why should anybody other than Peter, you, believe that a God exists?
Yeah. All right, I was telling you. So anyway, on the day of the dance, which was to be held in Cincinnati, Ohio, on Main Street, I went and danced my dance. Now, the last part of my dream, what my dream told me to do, is to blow El Condor Pasa in my flute.
Jesus Christ. Are you serious, Peter? You're just jacking with us now. You're just jacking with us now.
I'm not. Listen, Seth. I'm telling you the truth about this story. I had my family there, everything. I invited them to come see this.
Peter, this is maybe making me more atheist. I'm trying to figure out why other people should believe that a God exists. What is the evidence that a God exists? No.
I'm giving you my evidence.
No. You're giving us a story.
I'm trying to protect you. You're telling us a story about yourself that we have no idea if it's true or not. I kind of hope it's true. But I want to know why anybody else should believe that a God exists. Because if this all just exists in your head and you've made it up, it has no value to me.
I didn't make it up in my head. I wrote the book, Danza Blu Cucina. You can look it up. Danza Blu Cucina by Peter Dean. But the thing is a year to that date, on that day I was supposed to dance this dance, all right? I went out there. I danced my dances in Cincinnati on September
Peter,
14th, 2008. Hold on.
I'm either going to end the call.
Tell you what happened, and
nope. Okay, I'm muting you again. You're not answering the question. And I understand that you're really excited to share your story, but it's a waste of everybody's time, and it's really poisoning the well at this point for whatever else you might have to say about why we should believe that a God exists. I'm going to ask one more time, without telling a personal story about yourself, what is evidence that a God exists?
Okay, you told me that I couldn't go into any books to tell you how God exists, so I've stayed away from that. So the only
I didn't even
I'm
see
left,
that, but
hold on,
no
the
personal
only
experience,
I'm
Peter.
left with
Nope. I'm just
okay. So, all right. So, without personal experience, how can I tell you that anything about my life or anything about God?
I don't want to know about your life. I'm so sorry. You're a stranger on the internet. I do not care. I want to know if a God exists. I would like to know.
How does God exist? You must care. So I'm telling you.
If you stop yelling, then you're going to hear that I'm saying this. If there is a God, I would like to know. But then I need to know how I would be able to figure that out for myself, because I haven't had a dream that I'm a shaman and that I need to go dance in a square somewhere. And so does that mean I'm never going to find out that a God exists? Is that the only way somebody can find out if a God exists?
No, but I think that they find out through others.
I don't.
You know,
I'm telling you now, I do not find out through personal experience of others. That is not a good reason to believe something. It's definitely not a good reason to believe that a God exists.
You have to tell your own story. So you have to tell your own story, which I was telling you.
Peter, your story. You've been yelling.
You're telling me to do one thing.
Sorry, I had to mute him again. Do you want to try this one?
If a Muslim shows up and says, I had an experience and Muhammad spontaneously combusted and there was light and there's a cloth with pigment on it and, and all this stuff. And then I had a dream and an NDE and then I did a shaman's dance and that proves Allah or any other, the thousands upon thousands of God. We have to ask Peter if he would accept that as evidence.
He might. It sounds like he doesn't really know which God he believes in. If he was saying he doesn't know if Jesus was God, at least I think that's what he said earlier.
I mean, I see the word Christian, but he's like something happened. It's a weird, sort of a weird declaration. I don't really get that. But if somebody from a different religion, Islam, etc., said that they had a personal experience, then if that's how you learn things, you would accept Islam as the true faith, right?
Well, I would have to take the walk with it for a while, find out who this person is, find out what he's about. Of course, I would take some further steps. But if he wanted me to just tell if he said this is why God exists, that Muhammad burst up before me in a ball of flame and all the prophets appeared before me, well, I mean, where do we go from there? It would be, okay, what is your life like? Where is it going today? What are you doing today to promote this goodness that you want to bring out, that you're telling us that Allah is all about? So, I mean, I would definitely be open to anybody's, experience.
Okay, then here's my experience. Here's my experience, Peter. I used to believe that a God exists. Okay. I wholeheartedly believed. Right. Very long story short, I pursued that belief even more. I made it my entire life. I went to ministry school to learn everything I could about this God. And then I started realizing through reading more and more things, learning more about religion, learning more about science, learning more about reality, I realized I didn't have a good reason to believe that Christian God exists. And I also realized I had no reason to believe that any God exists. And here I sit, not believing. And so you shouldn't believe either. Because there's my experience.
Right. I'm getting that feel from you. You know, but the whole thing is.
But are you getting my point, Peter? Are you getting my point?
I get your point, but I'll listen to you. I'll listen to your arguments on why that is. I mean,
don't have an argument because
had-
Peter, I just don't hear a good argument for why I should believe that a God does exist. Your story is absolutely worthless to me. You are a person on the internet calling and saying some very fascinating things that are fun to listen to, but they have zero bearing on if I'm going to believe that something actually exists or doesn't exist.
Okay, let me just.
Is there no other reason? Let me ask you this, Peter. If you keep yelling, I'm going to hang up. I'm going to mute you again. Do you have any evidence for the existence of a God that isn't your personal story? Is there evidence that a God exists that is not a personal story? This is a yes or no question. So let's see if you can do it. Do you have evidence for the existence of a God that isn't a personal story? Yes or no?
Yes.
Great. What is it?
Yes, I do. It's eyewitness accounts of it that happened in the Old Testament.
There aren't any.
Yes, there are. There's many.
No. There's
Look
claims.
at Mount Sinai.
There's
A whole
claims.
nation saw it.
There's claims.
No,
so what is your
that's
evidence
not-
that
no,
wasn't
you're
just
asking me-
people saying something? You're literally giving me exactly what personal testimony. I don't want personal
But the
testimony.
prophecies are
It's not
coming
reliable.
That the prophecies are coming true. The prophecies are happening. If you really look.
Yeah. There's war
if
and
you
there's
really wanna see
famine.
them.
And guess what? Tomorrow there's going to be the sun and
Just like-
moon because that's what happens. And I can prophesy now that I'm going to be hungry in about 15 minutes. Actually, I'm already hungry and I'm going to make myself food. And I can prophesy that there's going to be pasta.
Well, that's kind of like, that's just, that's your routine. I mean, everybody has a routine, right? Everybody knows it's something that comes out of the blue at you or something like that, you never know. And Israel being reestablished as it is and the God of Abraham still holding on and things that are happening, that would be another reason why I could see God having an existence within our world, a storyline.
Because countries are at war against each other. Honestly, so much of it having to do with their opposing religions that are contradicting each other and basically telling each other to go to war with each other conveniently. That means that a God exists.
I'm saying that a lot of this was already foretold thousands of years ago to a people that experienced this God within within Israel. What is Israel today?
No, none of. So
I
suggest you call in next. I suggest that you call in and talk with Justin the next time he's on here to talk about biblical prophecy, unless Seth wants to talk about it.
But why do I have to talk about Justin? I mean, you're the one that won't let me speak and tell the rest of my story.
You don't have to talk about Justin.
She's asking you not to rely on personal testimony. So when you stopped giving your eyewitness account, you invoked the supposed eyewitness accounts of other people. All in all, we're saying that's not qualification for evidence. What evidence do you have? We know people are using the Bible to justify foreign policy and attitude regarding Israel. This does not mean that Israel is a part of divine destiny. And if you're going to invoke prophecy, you also have to get into prophecies like the prophecy of Tyre and others that absolutely did not come to pass. This has been a completely unproductive exchange, Peter. If you believe, okay, but you've given us no reason for us to believe.
But you're not letting me go with the rest of my story. You shut me up. You say that my evidence cannot be personal experience.
Peter, I will give you 1 minute.
I just don't see
will
how
give
that
you
could
one.
work.
Peter, I will give you 1 minute of
Yes, ma'am.
uninterrupted time to share. And if you convince us that a God exists by the end of that 1 minute, amazing. If not, we're going to drop the call.
Okay. At the
So
end of
let
the
me
one-
let me get my timer. Let me get my timer, and then I'll tell you
Okay. All right.
when your
Okay.
time starts. So let me pull that up. Sorry, I just got a new phone, so now I don't know how it works. And you can go.
Okay, so after I blew into the flute, I put the flute down and started walking back to the sidewalk, and a great wind moved in, and it blew all the event tents over. And once all the event tents were blown over, the wind blew for hours, knocking all the electrical out in Cincinnati. Okay, after all the electrical was knocked out in Cincinnati for close to a month, I was told to go ahead and start fulfilling prophecies across the Americas, which I did, which ended up at the Hopi the week that Israel was attacked. And once Israel attacked, I had to look over at Israel or Jerusalem and begin to fill the prophecies with them. But that is a true story. And the hurricane that moved in, that hit, that was planned for September 14th, 2008, was called Hurricane Ike, which means Isaac, which means laughter.
We're at a minute and 5 seconds.
Isaac was, there you go. But I'm telling you a story
Well, there you
that
go.
is true.
Promise. There you go.
Thanks for the
There
story,
you go.
Peter.
Yeah.
I have first of all, I have zero reason to believe you whatsoever. Nothing that you said,
Okay,
even if
well,
it was
you-
true, Peter, if you yell again, I swear I'll just drop the call
You
and I
don't
can
wanna
finish
Just
talking
drop it.
without you on
Just
here.
drop
You
it.
don't want to
Just,
believe.
just get it. Just stop.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry. I'm sure
I
the
also-
citizens of Cincinnati would like to talk about how they had lost power
Their power.
for 30 straight days and it made no national news. I'd like to hear about that story
Yeah.
from the residents of Cincinnati.
I find it also really insulting what he said at the end. I don't really care, but just in general, this phrase that's like, you don't want to believe. Because I wanted to believe more than anything. There's honestly still days where I'm like, my life would be so much easier in moments if I could still just like be blissfully believing like the rest of my family, following their, faith. I would have a way nicer, I would have a car. I don't even have a car. I would have a car. I would live in their fancy pants neighborhood with, all the things. I would have everything in common with my family. I would have a career that I had been taught. It was my calling my whole life. Like the stars would all align if I kept believing. When I lost my faith, it came from a place of desperately trying to hold on to it. So I find it extremely insulting for somebody to suggest that, oh, you just don't want to believe. No, I did want to believe. I just wanted to believe true things more. And that's why I stopped believing. So tell me a story other than, what was it, blowing a flute somewhere and something, and
then Christ spontaneously
maybe that would help,
combusted.
but
And then
that
apparently
we should
was
have
brought
known
out
when
into Galilee in an ashtray because the rest of him was just, yeah. I want to go back to the idea of a guy named Kevin who was crucified. There's something about contemporary names in biblical times amuses me. I'm such a child, promise. But the whole time he's literally, you're like, how do you know let's say it was even a dude. How would you link it to know it was Jesus? And he's like, I don't even remember what he said. Something about you can't explain it. You can't explain it. You can't explain it. And this was the case when I debated the Shroud on Piers Morgan, of all places, against a Bible apologist. And the whole time he was talking about how we know it's Jesus. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Did he sign his word? Did you get some peer review on that? Let's say the shape was a dude. It was a dude. You know what I'm saying? It just blows my mind. Blows my mind. Anyway, Kevin, I would worship Kevin.
That was a wild ride. Yes.
What a friend
Shroud
we
of
have in
Kevin.
Kevin. All our sins and griefs to bear.
Oh, that was a wild ride. Well, we have, like I said, we have to finish up in 10 minutes exactly. Do you think we can take this one last caller and keep it short, maybe?
This will be up to Max. But I say
Cool.
we'll give it a shot, and Max
Okay.
will realize in advance he's on the clock.
Okay.
So the onus is on Max, I guess.
Let's try. Hey, Max, you are on the Sunday show with Paramis and Seth. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Could you hear me now?
We can. We're gonna just give you the heads up. We basically have like 5 minutes to get this phone call wrapped because we have to move on to the next show. So if you just want to start, tell us what it is you called in for, and then Seth and I can each take a turn responding, and then we'll let you go.
Okay, well, the name is Mac. I called
sorry.
in not knowing if there was a particular theme today's show, but I've been wanting to connect with Seth for quite some time, and also to Promise, since I've been following your channel on YouTube for a while now, and I'm totally down with the idea that Eve was framed. Yeah, I will die on that hill. But
Me too.
I'm a person who has come to a deconstruction and deconverting mode quite late in life. I've been a Christian for 60 some odd years, and it's only been within the past year or two that I have started to question those beliefs. Interestingly enough, since it happened when I decided that I would read the Bible all the way through. And I'm understanding that that's kind of the way it happens for a lot of people. But for me, it didn't take long. It happened by the time I got to the book of Judges, I was pretty much over any notion that this book described a God who was worthy of praise and adoration. And from that time on, I started to, feel like I needed to re-examine my life. And I've always felt like I should give some credence to atheists, even though I felt like an atheist would of necessity think that I'm an idiot for having believed all of that stuff. But and maybe I was more concerned that maybe they were just right. So I wanted to kind of frame my argument from the idea that I hit the sweet spot for indoctrination early in life. My mom was a deeply religious person, and she kind of set me on that path. And I had no reason to doubt it because, I knew she wouldn't lie to me. And I realized that, over the years, well, she didn't really lie to me. She had been fed the same BS that she was feeding me. And, but now I come to a point where in my life I've had to, if I'm going to follow this journey, I need to let a lot of things go and burn some bridges. And I think what started me on that mostly was the idea that people who call themselves Christians really don't have a clue what they're talking about. And it's a lot
Mac, I'm
to do
so
with
sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure that we actually get what you want out of this call, or what the show can do for this call, because we do have to end the show like in 5 minutes. And so, is there a specific question that you had for us? I just want to make sure we're able to get to it.
I guess I'm struggling with the idea of, because my wife and I are separated, and she is also a deeply religious person, and I'm sort of struggling with the idea, not only with that, but also the people in my family from way back who are also deeply religious. They follow the Christian nationalist mode. And I'm feeling like I'm just burning a lot of bridges, and I need to be able to make peace with that. And I feel like I've sort of, come to a point where I'm at an inflection point. I need to go one way or the other, and I know the way I need to go. I just need to be able to make peace with it.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you just need support in that process. You may have heard us talk about it on the show before, but Recovering from Religion is an incredible organization, and they have the secular therapy program where they can help you find a therapist who is not going to be religious, is not going to try to talk you back into your faith, and be able to help you process these things. That's what I had to do. I had to get a therapist to help me process how relationships in my life were going to look now, because you're right. Like, I had to burn some bridges. Some bridges were burnt without me having a say in that. And so that would be my answer to you, is that I just recommend reaching out to Recovering from Religion. They have a bunch of resources too, even just like community and that sort of thing. Seth, what about you?
No, I can't top that. It's a great answer. RFR is wonderful. Appreciate you, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Mac. Have a great evening or afternoon, day, whatever it is. I'm not like a sweets person, but I've made it my new ritual that when I'm doing one of these shows or like a podcast interview, because of the time difference, for those who don't know, I live in Finland, so there's a big time difference. And so I have my bag of candy. Oh, you can't see. It's blurring it out. Oh, there we go.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see.
So I have my bag of Swedish candy, and that's kind of like sitting here just chewing on candy helps me stay awake. A little sugar rush.
Can be a spiritual experience too. You might see
treat.
God, with some of that stuff.
Oh,
by the
God.
way, it's been an honor to be able to co-host the show with the author of the soon-to-be-released book called Gospel of Lies, which is coming out in May. And I'm so excited for you. Excited enough to give you the shameless plug. All I ask, and I'm buying the damn book. You're not going to gift it to me, but I will buy it to support the author. The next time we cross paths, I want it autographed. I want it.
Okay. If you sign all of yours for me, then
I want a signature.
We can make it a trade.
I think it's remarkable, and I think I am going to slug. I think you telling people in depth about your journey, many people are going to see their own journey in it as well. And there's going to be a connection, and I think a reminder to them that they're not alone and that they're not crazy. And that has so much power. We change the world, I think, sometimes with data, but much more through stories. And your personal story, whether it's on the line or in the book, I think is really helping to lift people up when they're sinking, and they just like, oh my God, my whole life is a lie. What am I going to do next? What am I going to lose? Who am I? And so, when I heard that you were publishing, I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. And I've seen the book in PDF form in advance because
I just finally got a copy, which is so crazy. Well,
it's palpable. You are holding it in your hands. It's almost like
so
it's
weird.
A newborn, probably.
Yes, totally.
Anyway,
well, thank you. It means so much to me that you would think that and say that, and I'm excited. I wouldn't, be doing this without voices from people like you and everybody else here on the line and audience. Just so you guys know, like, your support has been huge throughout this process, and getting to have these conversations and seeing the value in it. So I don't know. I love what we get to do. I think it's really cool and special that people trust us to have these conversations. So.
It's kind of good medicine. I mean, not only do we, I don't know about you, but I've always been kind of a crusader. I mean, I was in the faith, right? Youth for Christ. I'm a broadcaster. I'm just always out there. I don't know what my problem is, if it's ego, insecurity, or both, insanity. But, even as a non-believer now, I just want to be on the front lines. I want to be in the soup. I want to be trying to make a difference. And I think that's hardwired in an activist nature. And that doesn't necessarily limit it to, you're not limited to YouTube, TikTok. I mean, even in your own people's own private circles, they just want to get engaged. So, you're probably that way as well.
Yep. I think also being the eldest daughter of 4, it makes you just be a big sister to everybody forever. Sorry. That's what I do. Well, we're going to send you guys over to Jimmy over on Calling It Now. If you didn't get a call in and you wanted to, this is a great time for you to be calling over there. Special thanks to our amazing producer, Lux, and to our whole crew, to our call screener, I believe that was Jess, to the moderators, everybody, y'all are amazing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all the things. Seth, it was so great hanging out. Thank you.
You too. You too. And praise Kevin. Praise
Yes.
Kevin.
Always.